Chapter 942. Are you here? Second-class servant girl. Qin Yuru sneered, but her face hurt. Yes. I'm now, a second-class servant girl. Qin Shui lowered her head even more. Come with me. If my mother thinks you are good, she may marry you. Qin Yuru said. No, Madame Shui and old Madame won't allow it. Qin Shui panicked, stepped back, and shook her head hurriedly. Speaking of Shui Rulan and old Madame Qin Yuru was angry and hateful, but she couldn't do anything to them. Now she couldn't do anything to them. She gritted her teeth and swallowed her anger. At this time, she didn't need to be angry for a servant girl and Shui Rulan. She was married now, and Qin's mansion and everything had little to do with her. In order to please her father, she had to be intimate with Shui Rulan. Otherwise, her father had said that if she made trouble again, she would not have to come back. He would pretend that he had never had her as his daughter. I'll mention it to Madame Shui when I find a chance. Qin Yuru waved her hand impatiently. Thank you, First Miss, thank you. Qin Shui said gratefully and hurriedly stepped aside to make way for them. Qin Yuru took Mei Shui to Yulan Pavilion where Madame D was. After they left, Qin Shui raised her head and looked thoughtfully in the direction where Qin Yuru went. First Miss made trouble a few days ago, and it was a big one. On the second day after the general brought her back from Duke Yong's mansion, Countess Yong and heir of Duke Yong came together and begged First Miss to return to Duke Yong's mansion. But it was said that something big happened after that, and the position of heir of Duke Yong was lost because of First Mississippi. What was she going to do now? After thinking for a while, she turned and went to the backyard. She had to talk to Madame Shui about this. First Miss returned from the back door, and Madame Shui might not know it. Qin Yuru hurriedly went to Yulan Pavilion. When she arrived at Yulan Pavilion, she pushed open the door of the courtyard. The courtyard was empty except for an old maid who was cleaning the floor. When she saw Qin Yuru coming in a mess, she was startled and did not recognize her at once. She stared blankly at Qin Yuru, who was unkempt and dirty, and stammered, Who are you? Get out of the way. Can't you see that the First Miss has returned to the mansion? Mei Shui stepped forward and pushed the old maid away, saying harshly. Qin Yuru ignored them and walked into the main room. As soon as she entered the room, a sour and rotten smell almost made her vomit. There was also an inferior servant girl in the room. Hearing the voice behind her, she turned around. It was not that she did not recognize Qin Yuru, but she was stunned by Qin Yuru's current appearance. Get out! Qin Yuru scolded. The little servant girl didn't dare to say much and left carefully. She met Mei Shui who was walking over and bowed to Mei Shui. The little servant girls didn't dare to offend such a personal servant girl like Mei Shui. Go away, the First Miss and Madam have something to discuss. Mei Shui waved her hand as if she was shooing away a fly and ordered her to go away. The servant girl looked at Mei Shui and then looked at the old maid who was driven out. She tactfully retreated to the door of the courtyard and stood outside with the old maid. In the main room, Qin Yuru entered the inner room. Madame D was lying on the bed in the inner room. She was so thin that she was almost a skeleton. Only a few strands of hair were hanging on her dry and yellow hair. There was no color on her face. She looked a little creepy. The veins on her hands on the bed were blue and swollen. Those who didn't know her would think that she was already in her 70s or 80s. Yuru. Seeing Qin Yuru, Madame D stammered. She hurt her throat 3 years ago and didn't take a good look at it. She didn't even have a good habit of speaking. When she spoke too much, the muscles and bones in her neck could be seen. Mother, I can't live anymore. They are going to divorce me. Qin Yuru threw herself at the bed and cried loudly. There was a little disgust in her eyes. If she had a choice, she didn't want to come back to see Madame D. Seeing Madame D like this made her very uncomfortable, which reminded her of what had happened in the past. She had always felt that she had not let Madame D down. She had helped Madame D to deal with Xiao Wanru, but she did not expect that things would change. She did not want it to happen. Madame D looked like a ghost now. If there was a slight possibility, Qin Yuru didn't want to see Madame D again. How dare they? Although Madame D couldn't move, she still said in a hoarse voice and reached out to hold Qin Yuru's hand. Qin Yuru suppressed her disgust and grabbed Madame D. Mother, what should I do? What should I do now? Father said that he would not care about me anymore. He said that he would not care about me anymore. Qin Yuru burst into tears. She really hated everyone. She was living a good life in Jiangzhou, but now she fell into such a situation. It was all because of those people. Xiao Wanru, Shui Rulan, old Madame Qin, Qi Rongji, Xiao Yenru. Of course, the most important thing was Duke Yang's mansion. They ruined her, ruined everything she had, made her have nothing now, and made her feel guilty to her biological mother. Qin Huayong. Bitch. Madame D scolded angrily and kicked her feet hard. She was not in good health, but she could still stand up. Mother, if I am really divorced, I will just die. Anyway, I have no children now. I have nothing. Qin Yuru cried even more sadly. Mother, of course I hurt you by accident, and I have always owed you. Now I return everything to you. I will hang myself here later as a last token of my gratitude to you. Qin Yuru cried so hard that her voice could not be heard. She looked very embarrassed before, and now she looked even more sad and desperate. Even though Madame D had the most grievances, she couldn't bear to see her biological daughter die in front of her. She held Qin Yuru's hand tightly, afraid that she would really hang herself. She tried to persuade her, Yuru, they won't dare to divorce you. Mother, what do you mean by won't dare? What do you mean by won't dare? Aunt said so in front of me today, and even Grandma didn't help me. Di Yan even beat me like this. Mother, how can I live like this? Qin Yuru cried. How dare they? Madame D was so angry that she couldn't breathe and kept rolling her eyes. Qin Yuru saw that she was in a bad situation, so she quickly reached out and patted her on the back. Finally, she calmed down. Di Yan beat you. Madame D said in a hoarse voice. There was a strange coldness in her eyes as she gritted her teeth. Yes, Mother, he beat me. Grandma and the others were watching, so no one spoke up for me. Aunt said that marrying me was a wastrel. She said that I ruined their family. Mother, if it weren't for them, I wouldn't have broken off the engagement. How could I have married Qi Tianyu? Broken off the engagement. It had been 3 years, but Qin Yuru always regretted it. If there was medicine for regret, she would have bought it long ago. Di Yan couldn't be compared to Qi Tianyu at all. In the past 3 years, Qin Yuru couldn't help but send people to find Qi Tianyu. However, Qi Tianyu was very disciplined and didn't pay attention to the people she sent. He also repeatedly told Qin Yuru to be a good wife of the D family and not to have any other ideas. But the more he said, the more Qin Yuru was unwilling to accept it. She should have married Qi Tianyu. Why did Di Yan interfere and use his family and her relatives to force her to break off the engagement with Qi Tianyu? Now that she married into the D family, everyone in the D family treated her badly. In Qin Yuru's heart, everything she did was for a reason. It was others who were at fault. It was others who caused her to be in this situation. Your grandma. Madame D tried hard to express her own opinion. Grandma is also on Di Yan's side now. Mother, I'd better die. No one cares about me, and no one cares about me. Qin Yuru cried and trembled. She said she would take care of you for me. Madame D was so anxious that her face and neck were red. She held Qin Yuru tightly. Mother, times have changed. Now that you are in such a situation, I have no hope. Of course, Grandma dotes on Di Yan more. Mother, In order to covet our dowry, Aunt made false accounts early. Do you remember that when you came to the capital, she said that your shops were losing money? She even forced our mansion to make up for the debts of more than 10 years. Mother, do you still remember? Chin Yuru became more and more angry. The dowry was originally Yong Mansion's fault. Did she have to admit it? Just because she spread the news, Duke Yong's mansion put the blame on her. It was Di Yan who failed to live up to expectations and lost the position of the heir. What did it have to do with her? Why did they blame her? When she returned to the mansion, Chin Yuru didn't come to see Madame D at all. Madame D still didn't know this. Listening to Chin Yuru's detailed explanation, she was so angry that a few yellow hair on her head almost stood up. Madame Sure, the bitch, really did something to her shops. Of course, she had suspected it before. When she married Qin Huayong, her mother repeatedly said that those shops were prosperous. How could they owe so much money later? It was really done by the bitch, Madame Sure. Bitch. Madame D gnashed her teeth in anger. If Madame Sure, Countess Yong was here, she would want to bite off her flesh. If she didn't have money at that time, she wouldn't have ended up like this. Madame Sure had done a lot of harm. Mother, not only did they not admit their fault, but they also put the blame on us. Mother, now we are in such a situation. They said that we asked for it. Mother, I really have no way out now. Father doesn't care about me, and I can't go back to Duke Yong's mansion. I. The more Chin Yuru said, the sadder she became. She looked at Madame D in despair, as if she really couldn't find a way out in the next moment and could only die. Good, bitch, they are heartless. Don't blame me for being heartless. Madame D scolded fiercely. She let go of Chin Yuru's hand, took out something from under her pillow, and handed it to Chin Yuru. Go find someone. He will help you. Chapter 943. Find this person, for what? Perhaps influenced by Madame D, Chin Yuru's voice also unconsciously lowered and trembled. She came here this time not only to complain to Madame D, but also for the thing that Madame D could take out now. If not for this thing, she would not specially come back to the general's mansion. Mother, who is this person? Hearing what Madame D said last night, Chin Yuru's heart was burning with anger. She tightly held the thing wrapped in a handkerchief that Madame D gave her and stared at Madame D. She vaguely heard the conversation between Countess Yong and old Madame last night. Mother, I want to divorce her. Countess Yong's voice was sharp, which was completely different from her usual magnanimity in front of others. She is your sister's biological daughter. How can you do this? Old Madame said sorrowfully, even if you don't care about your sister, you have to care about Qin Huayong. Now he is favored by the emperor and is about to go to the Su country. If you divorce Yuru at this time, the two families will definitely be estranged, and Yen will have no way out in the future. Mother, what are you worried about? She is just a shameful bastard. If General Qin really quarrels with us, I will make it known. At that time, we hurriedly married Madame D to cover up her belly. Countess Yong said angrily and sharply. How can you say that? Why can't I say so? Mother, our whole mansion is about to be destroyed by her. She is a bane. Mother, do you want to see all the people in our mansion die and take care of this bastard who comes out of nowhere? Countess Yong's voice became more and more angry. Mother, do you want to see all of us die? She is not a bastard. Old Madame retorted with a weak will. She is not. No, why didn't anyone marry her at that time? She just got pregnant and disappeared. Countess Yong's voice was as vulgar as a woman in the market, completely without the dignity of an aristocratic family. It could be seen that she hated Chin Yuru. At that time, we had no choice. That person has a wife. Old Madame was still defending Madame D. No choice. Mother really knows how to joke. Sister-in-law only ended up like this because she had no other choice. If General Qin hadn't been the scapegoat, would she have had to secretly give birth in our Duke Yong's mansion? Sure enough, like parents, like daughter. If she's rotten from the root, how can she get better? Countess Yong sneered and cursed. Don't talk nonsense. He is also a respectable person. Old Madam reprimanded with difficulty. Someone with status and reputation. Mother, tell me who it is. Let me see who is so famous that he would do such a despicable thing. If he is really famous, why didn't he directly take sister-in-law into the mansion? If he is famous, maybe sister-in-law would be willing to be a concubine. Countess Yong sneered mercilessly. In fact, Countess Yong was kept from the truth. At that time, she had just married into Duke Yong's mansion, so she didn't dare to control her arrogant sister-in-law. Moreover, her mother-in-law was there. As for Madame D's accident and her hasty marriage, she knew about it. She only knew that her sister-in-law was not a good girl. After having an affair with someone, she had no choice but to marry Qin Huayong. Qin's mansion was not powerful at that time. Originally, Duke Yong's mansion planned to break the marriage. Later, they had no choice but to marry Madame D in a hurry. After Madame D got married, she gave birth to Qin Yuru prematurely. Although it was said to be prematurely, in fact, it was not. Qin Yuru was born at full term. She just hid it from Qin Huayong. As for who it was, Countess Yong didn't know. You'd better not ask. Old Madam shook her head. At this time, why are you still hiding it? If it's useful, maybe you can help us. Countess Yong said. She didn't care about it at first, but when she mentioned it to Duke Yong, it seemed that the person was not simple. At this time, Countess Yong wanted to hold on to everything she could. As long as Di Yan's title could be restored, she would not let go of anything. This, mother, in your opinion, is this person useful or not? Is he really respectable? You don't want Yan, to be like this from now on, do you? Yan, isn't the type to study. If he's really like this, then our mansion will decline and we will be the same as the ordinary people outside. Countess Yong cried. I. Old Madam couldn't say a word clearly. Mother, I beg you. If this person is useful, let my sister-in-law beg that person. If he is useless, I really can't keep Yuru anymore. I can divorce her and marry a daughter of a noble family. Maybe Yen will have a chance to be promoted by the Yu family. Countess Yong's words were intermittent, so she didn't hear it clearly. There was only the shadow of their words in her ears, so she slowly connected the dots. She was not the biological daughter of her father, Qin Huayong. Her mother gave birth to her with another man before marriage. Moreover, this man might have some power and even made Countess Yong give in. If this was the case, she really didn't mind changing her father. Anyway, Qin Huayong didn't take her seriously. The most important thing now was to find this person. Her grandmother would definitely not tell her, so she had to find her mother, Madame D. Since she gave birth to her, she had to be responsible. She couldn't let Di Yan divorce her. Why did she fall into such a situation while Di Yan still had a chance? Yuru. Qin Yuru's body was pulled and swayed. She woke up from the memory of last night. Looking at Madame D's damaged face, a trace of disgust flashed in her eyes. With such a mother, no wonder she fell into such a situation. It must be retribution for the bad things Madame D did. Go find him, he is your father. Madame D said. This was hidden in her heart and she thought she would never have a chance to say it, but now she had to say it. Qin Huayong would not care about her anymore. He could let her live like this for the sake of Duke Yong's mansion. If Duke Yong's mansion fell, how could she live well? Go to him, ask him to, tell your uncle. Madame D bit her eyes, and her eyes were full of hatred. If they dare to do this to you again, I will not let them off. Originally, Qin Yuru's maiden family was the backing that Madame D trusted. Now, seeing everything that happened to her daughter, Madame D understood everything. Duke Yong's mansion didn't intend to care about her and her daughter anymore, and they intended to let her and her daughter take the blame. How could it be so easy? Is my father very powerful? Qin Yuru's eyes lit up with excitement. Listening to Madame D's confidence, was it because her biological father was a good man, but it was inconvenient for him to marry her mother at that time? If this was the case, she might become a miss of a big aristocratic family in the future, and a small declining Duke Yong's mansion was nothing to her. She wanted Di Yan to kneel in front of her, beg her not to leave him, beg her to kill all those bitches and sell them to the dirtiest place. As long as she thought of this result, Qin Yuru's eyes lit up. Then, it was nothing for her to call him father. No, you just give it to him, go to Prince Heching's mansion, find fourth old master. Madame D said with difficulty. Old Prince Heching's fourth legitimate son. Qin Yuru's voice trembled. This time, it was not excitement, but anger, resentment, helplessness, and anger. Unexpectedly, it was old Prince Heching's fourth legitimate son, Chu Huairan. Chu Huairan was the most famous playboy in the capital city, and everyone in the capital city knew him. Speaking of this old Prince Heching, he was also a well-known figure in the capital city. He was the uncle of the emperor's cousin and had a high seniority. However, he only held an idle position in the capital city and did not enter the imperial court. Prince Heching's mansion only looked good on the surface, but this Chu Huairan was very playboy. It was said that he would bring all kinds of women into the mansion, and when he was tired of playing with them, he would send them away. As long as people in the capital city mentioned this fourth Master Chu, they would shake their heads. Not only did he fail to get what he wanted, but he was also not a useful master for so many years. This was the kind of person who just ate and waited for death. What was the use of such a person even if he had the title of a relative? You go quickly. Madame D pushed her again and said anxiously. Since this matter had been mentioned, of course, she wanted Qin Yuru to do it quickly to prevent any accidents from happening. Mother, is it useful? Qin Yuru was not very satisfied and looked at Madame D coldly. Yes, it is useful, go. Madame D nodded repeatedly and pushed her again. Qin Yuru reluctantly folded the things wrapped in the handkerchief and put them in her arms. She let Mei Shui in, helped her dress a little, and then left with Mei Shui. Seeing Qin Yuru leave, Madame D breathed a sigh of relief. She leaned back on the cushion behind her and stared fiercely at the door. Since they were heartless, they should not blame her for being unkind. In it were not only the tokens left by them, but also some evidence of Duke Yong's mansion. Madame D thought that she knew nothing, but in fact, she had already known some things from the people sent by her mother. Yuru did not doubt Duke Yong's mansion, but Madame D had long suspected some things. For example, the servant girls from a good family, the kind who were especially good at seducing people. Obviously, they looked like the daughter of a good family, but the things they did were absolutely not what a daughter of a good family would do. Madame D had been secretly inquiring about the people sent by Duke Yong's mansion, and gradually, she was not far from the truth. With these things, even if that person did not care about the relationship in the past, he would see the benefits in it. She pulled a crazy smile on her face. Of course, she would not die. She still wanted to see how these people who hurt her died. She would not let any one of them go. First, she started with the report from Qin's mansion, Shui Rulan, and the bastard that Shui Rulan gave birth to. Fire, go, put out the fire. Suddenly there was a scream outside. Madame D realized later that her bed was on fire without her knowing. Chapter 944. It was Yuru. It was actually Qin Yuru. Madame D struggled hard. Her body reaction was slow and her movements were not very coordinated. Every time she thought about something, she would be at a loss and could not even notice the surrounding environment. She just stared blankly. Now she was very clear that it was her daughter who wanted to kill her. But she still wanted to live. She turned over from the bed and tried to climb out. Her face was ferocious and resentful. If she had known that her daughter was so unfilial, she should have strangled her when she gave birth to her. When the fire started, Chin-yuru had already reached the door of the backyard. Looking back at the thick fire behind her, Chin-yuru turned and left with an extremely calm face. When returning to Ningyuan Army General's mansion, she knew that this was the best result. Madame D could not live. After telling everything, Madame D could not live. With the reputation of an unfaithful mother, her reputation would not be good. Only when Madame D died could she have a chance to be more pitied by the world. Duke Yong's mansion would not mention divorcing her again. No matter what, Madame D was the daughter of Duke Yong's mansion. She had coveted her and her mother's dowry. Now her mother was dead. If she divorced her at this time, she would be scolded to death by the world. Chin-yuru clearly realized that Madame D's death would bring her a glimmer of hope. Besides, there was something Madame D gave her. After getting on the carriage, she ordered the carriage to go to Prince Heching's mansion. Chin-yuru did not notice that Qing Shui followed her out of the general's mansion. At this time, she also called an ordinary oil wall carriage and followed her carriage to Prince Heching's mansion. Chin-yuru took out the handkerchief from her arms and opened it. It was a very old hairpin. It could be seen that it should have been very exquisite, but now it looked a little old and inconspicuous. Under the hairpin, there was a very old note. Opening the folded note, there was an address. It was a very simple address. Nothing could be seen. It seemed to be the place where they had their secret rendezvous. Then there was a letter. This letter was not old. Different from the other notes, this letter was newly written, but sealed with ink. At first glance, it could be seen that Madame D had sealed it very carefully. Chin-yuru hesitated for a while and decided to keep her composure. She could not touch Madame D's things now. Only by not touching them would she appear more genuine. Madame D was dead. She had no second chance. Taking a deep breath, he wrapped it up again and stuffed it into his sleeves. He straightened his back and sat up straight. No matter how bad this person was, he was still his father. From this point of view, he was also of royal blood. No matter how useless the granddaughter of the little uncle of the emperor was, she was better than Duke Yong's mansion. The carriage stopped at Prince Heching's residence, and Mei Shui stepped forward. "Who is it?" The doorman looked at Mei Shui's sorry figure and asked in an ambiguous tone. "Our young miss wants to meet the fourth master of your mansion." Prince He's grandson was not young anymore. This fourth son was the famous fourth master of the capital. "Your young miss." The gatekeeper poked his head out and looked at the carriage parked outside the door. Then he looked at Mei Shui, whose face was still swollen. He waved his hand impatiently and said, "Go, go, go. Our prince said that no matter what you people do to our fourth master, our prince will not recognize you. You all want to climb up the fourth master's high branch. Why don't you see if you have this good fortune?" There were many people who came to see the fourth master, especially this kind of women. They were all from those unscrupulous families. The doorman had seen many of them, so he did not care much and directly waved his hand to drive them away. Mei Shui did not understand at first, and then she blushed with shame. "Our young miss wants to see your fourth master for something." "Yes, everyone who comes here says so." "Which building does your young miss live in?" The doorman curled his lips disdainfully and said, "Our prince said that no matter where your young miss comes from, even if our fourth master had promised before, it does not count." How can you take the words of a man in bed seriously? These words became more and more dirty. The doorman thought it was just some tricks of the brothel. How could he take these women seriously? Anyway, even if these women entered the mansion, they would be sent out by the fourth master in a few days. Did they really think that they could cling to the higher branches? They did not think about how sincere his fourth master, who was known as a playboy, could be. However, even if they knew that their fourth master was not sincere, there were still many women who came one after another to enter the gate of Prince He's residence. "Our young miss is the daughter of your fourth master." What nonsense are you talking about? Mei Shui was so ashamed that she could hardly speak. She stamped her feet hard and handed over the hairpin and a note in her hand. This is a keepsake left by your fourth master. Daughter? The doorman looked up and down in astonishment and took the keepsake. Looking at this old keepsake and Mei Shui's appearance, the doorman was really shocked and speechless. It was rare for a daughter to come to his door. Looking at the hairpin and the note in his hand, they were both old. This time, he did not dare to refuse and hurriedly ran into the mansion. Qin Shui followed Qin Yuru out. She called the prepared carriage and followed Qin Yuru's carriage. Therefore, she saw Mei Shui go to the door and say something. After a long time, the side door opened and Qin Yuru's carriage entered Prince He's mansion. Qin Shui still stayed there. After 2 hours, she saw Qin Yuru's carriage come out. Then the carriage left Prince He's mansion and turned in the direction of Duke Yong's mansion. Of course, she pretended not to know about Madame D's matter. Qin Shui thought for a while and ordered the carriage to turn in the direction of Prince Chen's mansion. Previously, Second Miss had told her that if anything happened, she must report it first. When she left, something happened to Madame D. The only person who left was the First Mississippi. First Miss was really vicious. Qin Yuru went to Prince Heching's mansion to meet her relatives. Xiao Wanru put down the teacup in her hand in surprise. No matter how much she disliked Madame D, she had never thought that there was such a reason. Qin Yuru was actually not Qin Huayong's daughter, so this was the secret that Madame D kept. An old madam of Duke Yong should have known it long ago, so she loved Qin Yuru so much. She immediately figured out all the things that she couldn't figure out in the past. In fact, when she forced Madame D last time and found that Madame D did nothing, Xiao Wanru had such a guess, but she felt that it was too unbelievable. In the last life, this matter was not revealed, but in this life, it was revealed. She gently rubbed the side of the teacup in her hand with her fingers and frowned slightly. Was there really no such thing in the last life? Or was she confused and didn't know anything? In the last life, Qin Yuru lived a good life and became a noble lady in the capital city. She had the support of Duke Xing's mansion and Qin Huayong's general's mansion. Could it be that she had the support of Prince Heching's mansion at that time? If it was explained in this way, it seemed to explain why she lived a better life than Xiao Yenru in the end. After Xiao Yenru, the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion, entered the imperial palace, she didn't get what she wanted, but Qin Yuru got what she wanted. From this point of view, Qin Yuru seemed to have borrowed the support of Qin Huayong in the last life, but Qin Huayong didn't know about it in the last life. A thought suddenly came to her mind. In the last life, she didn't pay attention to Ningyuan Army General's mansion anymore. If Qin Huayong knew that his only daughter was not her biological daughter, would he still treat Madame D as usual? Yes, when First Miss came back, I followed her all the time. But later, it seemed that Madame D's courtyard was on fire. I saw First Miss standing at the back door for a while. At that time, there was smoke coming out from Madame D's courtyard. Qin Shui said. After reporting to Madame Shui that First Miss came back, she kept an eye on First Miss, went around to Madame D's window from the back, and listened to a few words. After that, for fear that First Miss and Madame would find out, she sneaked out of the courtyard and waited. Having served in Madame D's courtyard for a long time, Qin Shui was very clear about the terrain of the courtyard, which was also the most important reason why Qin Shui could come and go freely without being discovered by Qin Yuru and Madame Shui. When Qin Yuru left, Qin Shui paid attention to her and left with her. As for what Qin Yuru did before leaving, she didn't see it, and she didn't expect that Qin Yuru would be so cruel as to burn her mother alive. Did something happen to Madame D? Xiao Wanru asked. She didn't feel sorry for Madame D's ending. Madame D was a cruel and merciless woman, and she was so vicious that it made people's hair stand on end. What happened at the moment was just because Madame D gave birth to a daughter who was more cruel and merciless than her. It was really God's fault that Madame D could enjoy prosperity in the last life. However, no matter how cruel and merciless Madame D was, she was still good to her daughter. Madame D probably would never expect that she would die in the hands of her beloved daughter in the end. Something must have happened. Madame D is in poor health, so it's not convenient for her to move, and her reaction is very slow. Whenever she thinks of something, she will look at the sky blankly. Even if someone shouts beside her, she may not be able to hear it. Qing Shui said. She had served Madame D before, so she knew her condition very well. Or it could be said that anyone who was familiar with Madame D knew her condition. She was in a daze, which was a little abnormal at first glance. Qing Shui, go back first. Xiao Wanru nodded. At this time, it was inconvenient for Qing Shui to stay outside. After you go back, report it to General Qin. What about the first miss burning Madame D? Qing Shui asked. Also, report that the first miss is not General Qin. Just say that you heard a few words, and then followed the first miss there. You saw the first miss enter Prince Heqin's mansion to claim her kinship, and then left. Xiao Wanru said lightly with her eyes darkening. This matter was a little weird. It seemed that she couldn't handle it alone. She had to ask Chu Luchen about Prince Heqin and what was going on with the fourth son of Prince Heqin. The thing that Madame D took out at this time must be unusual. Such a playboy did not seem to be a person who could keep his promise. Otherwise, Madame D would have asked Qin Yuru to claim her kinship for so many years. Why did Madame D think that at this time, the fourth master of Prince Heqin's mansion, who sounded unreliable, would keep his friendship with her and help Qin Yuru wholeheartedly? This matter was definitely not simple. Claim her kinship? It was more like a superficial action. Chapter 945. After Qing Shui left, Xiao Wanru thought for a while and went directly to Chu Luchen. It was still the study. The guard led her to the most secluded second floor and then left. Xiao Wanru had been here before. She went up the stairs to the third floor, which couldn't be seen from the outside. She only felt that it was only the second floor, but the ridge was a little higher. All the royal buildings had high ridges, so it was not eye-catching. When she went upstairs, she saw Chu Luchen sitting leisurely in the chair. Seeing her coming, he waved to her. Xiao Wanru walked over. Before she said anything, she was pulled into the wide chair by him. However, no matter how wide the chair was, it was still a little uncomfortable for two people to squeeze together. After Xiao Wanru moved a little, she was picked up by Chu Luchen and sat on his lap. Ningyuan Army General's mansion suddenly caught fire, and it was Madame D's courtyard that was burned. The servants failed to save her in time, and Madame D died. Chu Luchen said casually with a happy smile. If Xiao Wanru hadn't stopped him, he would have killed Madame Qin Huayong long ago. Now that he heard that she died, he naturally wouldn't feel bad. This woman should have died long ago. What did the people outside say? Xiao Wanru was not surprised that Chu Luchen knew about it. She played with a jade pendant on Chu Luchen's waist and said lightly. They said that Madame D couldn't get over it and burned herself. The reason why she couldn't get over it was that Duke Yong's mansion forced her to do so. I heard that the first miss of Qin's mansion had a bad life in Duke Yong's mansion and was beaten by Di Yen this time. She went back to her parents' house sadly and met her biological mother. She must have said something aggrieved and angry. After leaving, the more Madame D thought about it, the more sad she became, so she couldn't get over it. Chu Luchen said with a smile. Xiao Wanru blinked her watery eyes twice and asked, "It has been spread so fast." Seeing that Xiao Wanru was so clever, Chu Luchen chuckled and said in a pleasant and clear voice, "It is indeed fast. It is the people of Prince Heqing's mansion who want to promote it." His news came quickly and delicately. No matter how ordinary the people from Prince Heqing's mansion were, he could still discover it very quickly. The only thing that puzzled him was why Prince Heqing's mansion had a relationship with Ningyuan Army General's mansion and seemed to have the intention to protect Qin Yuru. However, this matter was not urgent. As long as he continued to investigate, he would definitely be able to find something. Prince Heqing's mansion had long faded out of the circle of the rich and powerful. Although he held the position of the patriarch of the royal family, he was just an idle person. Prince Heching was also a smart person, especially at this time, he would not get involved. The current decision surprised Chu Luqian a little. Qin Yuru is the illegitimate daughter of Madame D and the fourth son of Prince Heching. Xiao Wanru immediately knew the key point. Her long eyelashes fluttered twice and she said bluntly. She came here to tell Chu Luqian about this. Chu Luqian really didn't know about this. Hearing Xiao Wanru's words, he was slightly stunned at first, and then he smiled. His eyes were sparkling, and it could be seen that he was really happy. Qin Huaiyong used to dote on his only daughter and never cared about Zhuozhuo. Even because he knew that Zhuozhuo was not his biological daughter, he turned a blind eye to Madame D and her daughter's plot against you. Now you have suffered retribution. As expected, the heavenly law is far away. Not bad, not bad. Xiao Wanru looked at the fairy-like handsome man speechlessly and said. Such narrow-minded words. Such words did not seem to be said by a prince. It was too ungenerous and narrow-minded. But she liked it. A smile slowly appeared on her pink little face, and she nodded hard. I'm also happy. In the previous life, Qin Huaiyong, who watched helplessly as she was framed by Madame D and her daughter and dragged into the mud by Duke Xing's mansion, also had such a day. She was indeed very happy. Although Qin Huaiyong did not take the initiative to harm her, he had always been very selfish. No matter in the previous life or this life, Qin Huaiyong was very selfish. As the saying went, the kindness of giving birth was not as great as the kindness of raising. Even though she knew that she was the daughter of the former heir of Marquis Xing, Xiao Wanru also wanted to respect Qin Huaiyong as her father. However, what Qin Huaiyong did made her not feel touched at all. No matter what Qin Huaiyong's purpose was, it was true that he watched her being framed. He had never lent a helping hand to him. In this life, she also realized this later. Originally, she thought that even though Qin Huaiyong was not his biological daughter, he always had some father-daughter relationship with her. Later, she found that the so-called father-daughter relationship was really nothing in Qin Huaiyong's heart. If it weren't for the fact that Xue Rulin had married Qin Huaiyong at that time, she would not even marry them. I always take revenge. Originally, I wanted to make Qin Huaiyong suffer along the way. Since even the daughter who has been pampered for more than 10 years is fake, he really wasted so many years of painstaking efforts. Chu Luqian said and pulled Xiao Wanru into his arms. Although Xiao Wanru was smiling, the sadness in her eyes made people feel sorry for her. She was an orphan without parents. Qin Huaiyong said that he raised her, but he never cared about her. He only cared about his biological daughter. Even if this biological daughter insulted Xiao Wanru, he didn't care and only came out to say something when things got serious. And this sentence was also to help his biological daughter. Thinking of Xiao Wanru's experience, how could Chu Luqian not feel sorry for her? She was the only woman he wanted to cherish and dote on, but she lived such a hard life. In the future, you have me. Don't mind them. No matter who they were, she didn't need to mind them. From now on, she didn't lack people's love, nor did she lack people's love. It became quiet in the room. Xiao Wanru leaned her head against Chu Liuqian's chest, and there was an inexplicable bitterness in her nose, which made her dare not open her eyes for a moment, for fear that her tears would fall. In her last life, no one had said this to her in her whole life. It seemed that she had been walking alone in the world of confusion. Don't care about those people or things. You are Prince Chen's princess, and I can protect you justifiably. Chu Luqian looked down at Xiao Wanru. Even though she closed her eyes tightly, he could still sense the sadness in her eyes. Her long eyelashes fluttered, as if something fell on his heart and made him feel pity for her in his heartless heart. In this life, she was the only one. Xiao Wanru didn't say anything, just put her arms around Chu Liuqian's strong waist, and slightly raised the corners of her mouth. Perhaps she had forgotten that in her last life, she actually had a unique protection. I won't care about them. Xiao Wanru said with her eyes closed, and the smile at the corners of her mouth made her look a little relieved. In this life, she was very open-minded. She wouldn't care about those who didn't care about her. In response to her, Chu Liuchen's gentle hand gently touched her face, and her face involuntarily blushed. What kind of person is Prince Heching? Xiao Wanru reached out to press down Chu Liuchen's hand, which was making trouble, and asked. Prince Heching is the imperial patriarch of the royal family, which is equivalent to the position of the patriarch. My uncle is the emperor, but he doesn't take the position of imperial patriarch. He mainly deals with some affairs among the clansmen. My uncle doesn't have the leisure to take care of such things. The royal family is uneven, and it's better for someone to take care of it than no one. Prince Heching is my uncle's little cousin. In fact, he is a little distant from the royal family. However, because of his high seniority and good popularity, he has the position of imperial patriarch, and therefore was granted the title of Prince Heching. It was originally given to him because of his position of imperial patriarch. He has a good reputation in the royal family, except for his fourth son, who is not so good. Chu Luchen said in a low voice. Even though she just said one sentence, he already knew what she was thinking. The fourth son, Chu Huairan, is a dissolute young master. He didn't do anything good when he was young, and his reputation is terrible. However, the only thing lacking about him is that he's dissolute. I've never heard of anything else. As for the others, they are all mediocre in terms of talent and character. It can be said that in the royal family, Prince Hefei, who holds the position of clan head, is mediocre in every aspect. But this time, I can see that something is different. Chu Luchen said meaningfully. Xiao Wan removed her watery eyes and raised her still misty eyes. Is it because of Qin Yuru? He can help Qin Yuru spread such a reputation in such a short time. I have underestimated Prince Heching before. Chu Luchen said lazily. Will Prince Heching recognize Qin Yuru? Xiao Wanru asked subconsciously. She always felt that Qin Yuru's matter was too smooth. For so many years, he didn't recognize Qin Yuru, so there must be a reason. Now, not only did he recognize Qin Yuru so easily, but he also wholeheartedly helped Qin Yuru. Did he really treat Qin Yuru as a family? It depends on what Madame D gave them. It should not be just a matter of recognizing Qin Yuru as a family. Prince Heching is wise to protect himself. If there is nothing special, even if Qin Yuru is really Qin Yuru, so what? Prince Heching's mansion has no shortage of granddaughters, let alone a granddaughter with a bad reputation. Chu Luchen said meaningfully, with a wicked smile on his handsome lips. His eyes fell from the window to the opposite yard. Prince Heching. He had really underestimated him before. You don't have to intervene in this matter now. Since Prince Heching has done this, he must have a backup plan. He should be aiming at the background of Duke Yong's mansion. Chu Luchen said. Xiao Wanru's heart skipped a beat. For those sons of good families? Yes, the backup plan of those sons of good families. Chu Luchen kissed Xiao Wanru's face gently. Then he looked at her shy face and comforted her insincerely. I really can't help it. I will pay attention next time. It would have been better if he didn't say it. Xiao Wanru's face became redder. She reached out to push Chu Luchen hard and stood up with his hand pressed. She said angrily, I'm going to get ready. When the people of Qin's mansion come later, I will go and have a look first. After saying that, she turned around and left without waiting for Chu Liuchen's answer. Chu Liuchen's eyes fell on her petite figure, and the smile on the corners of his mouth couldn't help overflowing. He knew that if he continued to make trouble, she would be angry out of shame. He stopped teasing her and just laughed and watched her go downstairs. Chapter 946. The servants of Qin's mansion came quickly. They were Madame Dowager's servants. When they saw Xiao Wanru, they looked panicked and said, Princess, something happened to Madame D. Madame Dowager asked if you could come over sometimes. I'll go now. Xiao Wanru nodded and walked out with Yujie. She had always been close to old Madame Qin and repeatedly told her to send someone to find her if anything happened. When her carriage arrived at the general's mansion, Shui Rulan came out to greet her with a pale face. No one expected such a thing to happen. Shui Rulan was a kind-hearted person. Madame D stayed in the mansion quietly and didn't make trouble. She just smashed things and lost her temper occasionally, which was good enough for Shui Rulan. After all, Madame D was Qin Yuru's mother, so it was good that she didn't make trouble. Aunt Shui, has the fire been put out? Xiao Wanru looked in the direction of Yulan Pavilion and asked. The fire has been put out, but Madame D is also gone. Shui Rulan frowned tightly. She had no backing and had always been very afraid of Duke Yong's mansion, for fear that Duke Yong's mansion would make trouble because of Madame D. Aunt Shui, don't worry. It will be fine. Xiao Wanru comforted her and went to Madame Dowager's courtyard together. In the main room, Madame Dowager had been waiting there. Seeing Xiao Wanru come over, she hurriedly stood up and bowed to her. Xiao Wanru took a step forward and hurriedly supported her. Grandma, you don't have to be so polite to me. After saying that, she helped Madame Dowager sit down. Madame Dowager sighed. Although she didn't like Madame D, she didn't expect that she would be burned alive. She reached out to hold Xiao Wanru's hand and sighed with emotion. After a long while, she said, Yuru has been here. Grandma, don't worry. Duke Yong's mansion won't make trouble. Xiao Wanru said softly. She knew Madame Dowager's scruples and understood that Madame Dowager specially called her over to help support the situation. If Duke Yong's mansion really made trouble, it would be difficult to settle this matter. In the past, Duke Yong's mansion would always make trouble if those things were not serious, not to mention now. Madame D is dead. How can Duke Yong's mansion be kind to them? Old Madame Qin sighed again. In a while, when the people of Yongkang Mansion make trouble, don't step forward. Just watch from the side. As long as you are here, the people of Duke Yong Mansion won't go too far. The rest doesn't matter. Just pay some compensation. Madame just wanted to make peace now and didn't want to make trouble with those from Duke Yong's mansion. Madame Qin just wanted to make peace and didn't. Qin. Hearing that old Madame Qin was still thinking about her in this situation, Xiao Wanru's heart became increasingly soft. Since such a thing happened in Ningyuan Army General's mansion, she had to come to have a look no matter what. For the sake of old Madame Qin who had raised her for so many years, she was also worried about Shui Rulan and old Madame Qin. Grandma, don't worry. It will be fine. It is said that Qin Yuru was beaten in Duke Yong's mansion and came to complain to Madame D. Madame D couldn't get over it and burned herself after Qin Yuru left. Xiao Wanru said. Chu Luchen knew it, but old Madame Qin didn't necessarily know it. As expected, as soon as she said that, not only old Madame Qin but also Shui Rulan was stunned. It would do no harm to Ningyuan Army General Association, but Duke Yong's mansion would take all the blame. Coupled with what had happened before, wasn't it Duke Yong's mansion's fault? Who spread this? Shui Rulan was not stupid. She immediately asked with her eyes wide open. If it was not someone with ulterior motives, how could there be such an explanation? I don't know. Anyway, many people are talking about it. The news spread fast. Xiao Wanru said casually, Grandma, does this matter have something to do with Qin Yuru? She went straight to the point. It is said that the fire started after Yuru left. Maybe, it was accidentally set on fire. Old Madame Qin said with difficulty. She really didn't want to think that her granddaughter was such a person who even killed her biological mother. How vicious she was. Grandma, did Qin Yuru do it? Compared with old Madame Qin's disbelief, Xiao Wanru was much more determined and said bluntly, Grandma and Aunt Shui are very clear about what kind of person Madame D is. It is impossible for her to be so stupid that she really wants to die. As for Qin Yuru, she dared to kill her mother 3 years ago. Now there is nothing she doesn't dare to do. But, she is her biological mother. Shui Rulan gasped. She didn't want to believe that Qin Yuru really did it. Aunt Shui and Grandma don't believe it, but the general must believe it. Xiao Wanru said calmly. At this time, Qin Huayong, who knew the real background of Qin Yuru, was so angry that he wanted to kill someone. He had raised his daughter for so many years and ruined the reputation of the whole general's mansion. In the end, all his efforts were in vain. She raised a child for someone else. Any man couldn't bear it. What was more, Qin Huayong was a general. Old madam, people from Duke Yong's mansion are here. An old maid hurried in with a panicked face. It seemed that Duke Yong's mansion didn't come to do good. He brought a large group of people with him in an aggressive manner. Mother, I'll go and have a look. Don't come out. Although Shui Rulan was a little panicked, she still stood out and said, Aunt Shui, I'll go with you. Xiao Wanru was extremely calm. I'll go. Old madam was worried. She took Xiao Wanru's hand and wanted to stand up. It has become like this. I have to go out. Isn't General Qin here? Xiao Wanru said. It's not appropriate for a man to come out for this kind of thing. Old Madam Qin shook her head. She thought it was more appropriate for someone from the inner court to come out at this time. It was not suitable for her son to deal with this kind of thing at this time. Besides, Madame D was his legal wife now. Shui Rulan was not good enough. Old Madame Qin was afraid that people from Duke Yong's mansion would come to harm to Shui Rulan. Shui Rulan was gentle, but she was no match for Countess Yong. Seeing that old madam insisted, Xiao Wanru did not force her to stay and went out with old madam and Shui Rulan. Hearing that people from Duke Yong's mansion came to make trouble, Qin Huayong would definitely not be able to bear it. He had no place to vent his anger, but people from Duke Yong's mansion dared to come here. If he continued to bear it, he would not be a man. The people from Duke Yong's mansion and those from General's mansion met at the second gate. Countess Yong was the leader of Duke Yong's mansion, accompanied by Qin Yuru and Duke Yong himself. It could be seen that they were rushing inside angrily. Duke Yong did not go to find Qin Huayong. Instead, he followed his wife to the inner court to find old Madame Qin and Shui Rulan to settle accounts. As soon as she saw old Madame Qin and Shui Rulan, Countess Yong waved her hand and said to the old maid following her, "Beat this bitch to death. How dare she use the position of a second wife to force my sister-in-law into a corner. She is so vicious that it makes one's hair stand on end. Today, I'm here to avenge my sister-in-law. Beat her with all your might. If she breaks anything, it's on me." Hearing her words, several old maids immediately rushed to Shui Rulan with sticks in their hands. Qin Yuru took a step back calmly and looked at Shui Rulan with a sneer. Even though she knew that she was not Qin Huayong's daughter, she still hated Shui Rulan. It would be best if Shui Rulan could be beaten to death by her mother-in-law. If Shui Rulan died, she would not be able to suppress her anymore. As for whether the old maid on her side would be beaten to death or not, it did not matter. Anyway, she disliked both sides. Of course, the one she disliked the most was Xiao Wanru. She was exquisite and beautiful, and her skin was as white as uranium. At first glance, it could be seen that she had lived a good life. Whether it was her complexion or her appearance, Xiao Wanru could not raise her head. She clearly knew that there was a huge difference between her and Xiao Wanru at present. At that time, she was the most beautiful one, and Xiao Wanru was the mud under her feet. Xiao Wanru could do whatever she wanted. Fortunately, she was also a member of the royal family now, and her bloodline was much higher than that of Xiao Wanru, the granddaughter of the eldest princess who had married outside. In the future, she would have more opportunities to meet the princes. Maybe she would have a chance to step on Xiao Wanru. Thinking of this, she became excited in her heart. It would be best if something happened to Xiao Wanru. Even if she could not be beaten to death or disabled, it would be best if she could be disfigured. Xiao Wanru glanced around and saw a branch on the ground. She already knew in her heart that she would stab Xiao Wanru's face with this branch in the chaos. Anyway, there were so many people fighting. Who would know who disfigured Xiao Wanru? Only by disfiguring Xiao Wanru's face could she vent her anger. Xiao Wanru always felt that everything about Xiao Wanru in front of her originally belonged to her. Xiao Wanru also paid attention to Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru glanced at Xiao Wanru and saw the venom in Xiao Wanru's eyes. Xiao Wanru sneered in her heart. Xiao Wanru really thought that she had climbed up a high branch and acknowledged a good father. Protect the princess, Yujie hurriedly said when she saw that the situation was not good. The two guards who followed Xiao Wanru into the mansion unsheathed their swords and pointed them at the old maids who rushed over. The sharp cold light seemed to reflect the color of blood. No matter how fierce these old maids were, they did not dare to rush toward the sword and stood stiffly in place. A few of them with sharp ears heard the word, princess, and couldn't help looking at Xiao Wanru. Was she Princess Chen? Princess Chen, this is the family affair between our mansion and General's mansion. It has nothing to do with you. Please ask the guards of Prince Chen's mansion to get out of the way. If they really make trouble, it will be disadvantageous to Prince Chen. After all, this is just a family affair. Prince Chen is a prince. It is not good for him to interfere in the family affairs of his officials. Countess Yong said to Xiao Wanru coldly. She came here to make trouble and gain benefits. If she could suppress Qin Huayong and speak for Duke Yong's mansion, Di Yan might be able to be the heir of Duke Yong's mansion. Originally, she had to find an excuse even if she had no excuse. At this time, an excuse came. Countess Yong was so overjoyed that she immediately came here with Xiao Wanru, who had just come back, to ask for benefits. Countess Yong also had a hard time. Chapter 947. Family Affairs. Seeing Countess Yong's shrewish and troublemaking look, old Madame Qin was also annoyed. She took a few steps forward and said, if you didn't make trouble again, would Yuru come back to complain? If she didn't come back to complain, would Madame D get into trouble? Madame, sure, God is watching what you do. What's right and wrong is the cause and effect, and there are witnesses. Moreover, for so many years, you have been greedy for the dowry shop. Madame Sher's way of eating is too ugly. She doesn't look like a madam from an aristocratic family. Madame Dowager was also extremely angry. In the past, Duke Yong's mansion always suppressed General's mansion. Because of Qin Yuru's reputation, General's mansion was suppressed again and again. When facing Duke Yong's mansion, it was always weak. Now, Madame Dowager didn't have so many scruples and directly said it. This was a slap in the face, and the last sentence almost directly called Countess Yong a shrew, and directly pushed the matter to Duke Yong's mansion without hesitation. This had never happened in the past 3 years. Countess Yong froze for a moment and then flew into a rage. When did the family members of General's mansion dare to speak in her face? Old Madame Qin, it's not that we don't want to give you face. It's all your fault. Let's not talk about the reasons. Now my sister-in-law is dead in your house. If no one set the house on fire in broad daylight, how could she be burned to death? Madame Dowager didn't investigate the matter, but kept making trouble about some small things in the past. I am very suspicious that you deliberately changed the topic. Old Madame Qin, if you think what we said is not suitable and don't want to be in-laws with us, Yuru's marriage can be broken, but sister-in-law's death must be avenged. Countess Yong said domineeringly. In the last life, when she went to General's mansion, she had to say a few soft words for the dowry shop. In front of people in Qin's mansion, Countess Yong had always been very proud. Now she talked about Qin Yuru's marriage again. In the past 3 years, she had said this many times. After saying that, Countess Yong raised her head proudly. She didn't believe that Qin's mansion would really abandon Qin Yuru. Even if Qin Huayong had a son, he was too young to be compared with Shangxin, the daughter he had raised for so many years. Old Madame Qin was so angry that her whole body trembled because of Countess Yong's fearless attitude. Xiao Wanru hurried forward to hold her, raised her beautiful eyes to look at Qin Yuru diagonally opposite her, and slightly raised the corners of her mouth. Countess Yong thought that this was a good excuse, but Qin Huayong, who had been suppressing his anger, was about to explode when he heard this. Qin Yuru lowered her head as if the quarrel between the two families had nothing to do with her, but there was a sneer in her lowered eyes. The more they argued, the worse it would be. The best-case scenario would be for the two families to fall out with each other. Grandpa had said that this way, the third party would be able to reap the benefits. Thinking of her newly recognized grandfather and the wealth she had experienced all the way to Prince Heching's mansion, Qin Yuru was so excited that she held the handkerchief in her hand tightly. Although General's mansion was a new noble family, it was still not comparable to Prince Heching's mansion. Duke Yong's mansion was only a declining noble family, and it was not comparable to Prince Heching's mansion, which was a royal family. Even if Prince Heching's mansion was an idle clan relative, Duke Yong's mansion was definitely not comparable to Prince Heching's mansion in terms of the title of prince. Prince Heching was her biological grandfather. Although she didn't see her father yesterday, her grandfather was very kind to her. After a little inquiry, he recognized her and told her not to act rashly. With the support of Prince Heching's mansion, she was afraid that what? Sure enough, Madame D's death would benefit her a lot. Judging from Prince Heching's guilt toward her, she knew that what she did was right. Her mother's body was already like this, and she would be neither a human nor a ghost even if she was alive. It would be good for her to reincarnate earlier. It was not that she, as a daughter, was cruel. This could be regarded as helping herself and her mother. She felt proud in her heart and couldn't help showing a smile on her face. But then she came to her senses and hurriedly straightened her face. Although her smile was short, it still fell into the eyes of some people who were observant. Xiao Wanru had been paying attention to her, so naturally, she also saw the fleeting smile on Qin Yuru's face. She sneered secretly in her heart. Madame D was vicious, and Qin Yuru was even better than her. In order to climb up the social ladder, Qin Yuru could sacrifice anything. Madame D had been sacrificed once, so it was no surprise this time. Like mother, like daughter. The other person who saw it was Qin Huayong, who came in a hurry. Thinking of the news reported by Qing Shui to him just now and some things in the past, he immediately figured out some inexplicable aspects. At that time, Madame D was not premature at all. It was obviously a normal delivery. Qin Yuru was not small when she was born and had been very healthy since then. It was impossible for a premature baby to be like this. Thinking that he had been deceived by Madame D for so many years and that he had been wronged in front of Duke Yong's mansion for so many years, Qin Huayong was so angry that he almost vomited blood. If it were not for Madame D and Qin Yuru, he would not have to retreat again and let Duke Yong, the useless person, climb over his head. Hearing that people from Duke Yong's mansion came with Qin Yuru to denounce her aggressively, Qin Huayong took down a sword from the wall and ran over angrily. Hearing Countess Yong's threatening words, he subconsciously looked at Qin Yuru and then saw Qin Yuru's smiling face. Qin Huayong's head buzzed and he immediately exploded. He strode over, stretched out the sword in his hand, and aimed at Duke Yong, who was standing on the side without saying a word. In front of the shining sword, even Countess Yong was startled. She pulled Duke Yong back a few steps in a hurry. She became Countess Yong's countess because of Duke Yong. She could not let anything happen to Duke Yong. "Brother-in-law, what do you mean?" Countess Yong said with a cold face. In terms of attitude, she wanted to suppress Qin Huayong first. This was also the attitude that Duke Yong's mansion often used when dealing with Qin's mansion in the past 3 years. Countess Yong was very experienced. As long as she was tough, Qin's mansion would definitely give in the end. After all, Qin Yuru was Qin Huayong's biological daughter. She was not the one picked up. How much affection could they have for her if she was not their biological daughter? How could a biological daughter be different from a non-biological daughter? Qin Huayong followed up with his sword and continued to point at Duke Yong. His face was livid, and the blue veins on his forehead bulged fiercely. If he did not have a trace of reason, he would have stabbed the sword fiercely. He was a general, not a scholar who had never been to the battlefield or seen blood. It was not a big deal for him to kill someone. Brother-in-law, what do you mean? Duke Yong was also annoyed. He reached out to push Countess Yong away and said sternly. Take Madame D and her away. From now on, your mansion has nothing to do with General's mansion. Qin Huayong shook the sword in his hand, pointed at Qin Yuru, and said coldly. This was already he did his best to restrain himself. Old Madame Qin found that Qin Huayong was not right. She wanted to step forward, but was stopped by Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru quietly and gently pinched old Madame's arm and pulled her back. Shui Rulan also found something wrong. She frowned and stood still, staring at Qin Huayong, but did not step forward. Xiao Wanru calmly pulled old Madame Qin to stand beside her. Brother-in-law, are you crazy? Hearing Qin Huayong's words clearly, Duke Yong was stunned for a moment and then gasped. His words were interrupted by Countess Yong. Brother-in-law, are you going to break off the engagement with us? Well, that's exactly what we want. Yuru is also here today. She can't go back later. We can't afford the girls in your mansion. She not only made us restless, but also made us lose our titles. If you send her back, I have to buy some firecrackers to set off a few to get rid of the bad luck. But I can't let my sister go. She married into our mansion and managed your mansion for so many years. She also gave birth to a daughter for you. If she passes away like this, you have to give us an explanation. Countess Yong sneered. If we can't figure it out, we will report it to the government. We have to figure it out before we can completely break off the engagement with each other. The more Countess Yong said, the more confident she became. She did not believe that Qin Huayong would really abandon Qin Yuru, ignore Qin Yuru, and break off the engagement with Duke Yong's mansion. Break off the engagement? Qin Huayong repeated with a sneer. Yes, break off the engagement. We must break off the engagement. After arranging my sister's affairs, we must break off the engagement. This time, no matter how your mansion begs us, we will not be soft-hearted anymore. Madame Countess Yong raised her head high, and her sense of superiority made her words more and more tough. She was really not afraid that Qin Huayong would never admit it. What did Duke Yong say? Qin Huayong still pointed his sword at Duke Yong and asked harshly. If you continue to do this, it's better to break off the engagement. Duke Yong said angrily. Although he still felt sorry for Qin Yuru, he had to make such a decision at this time. Being pointed at by Qin Huayong with a sword, no matter how good his temper was, he would lose it. Moreover, his sister was gone, but Qin Huayong still had the face to point at him with a sword. Duke Yong was so angry that his face turned blue. He stared at Qin Huayong and gnashed his teeth. Come on, bring Madame D here. Qin Huayong took a deep breath and said to the manservant beside him in a stern voice. The manservant hurriedly ran down. After a while, two manservants carried a board over. The figure on the board was covered with a white bedsheet, and the exposed hands were all black. Sister, sister. Duke Yong was so sad that he wanted to pounce on her. Qin Yuru turned her hand and pointed the sword at his chest again. Take her away. It's all yours. You can cry all you want. Don't ask me about Qin Yuru's affairs. You can deal with it as you like. From now on, your mansion has nothing to do with our mansion, and we will never contact each other again. Qin Huayong said almost word by word. His words were clear and ruthless, which made people feel inexplicably guilty. Father. Qin Yuru couldn't pretend anymore. She hurriedly raised her head, looked at Qin Huayong with tears in her eyes, and cried aggrievedly, Father, if you don't care about me, I'd better kill myself here. After saying that, she rushed to the tree trunk on the side. Chapter 948. A servant girl of Duke Yong's mansion saw that something was wrong and hurried forward to pull Qin Yuru. Qin Yuru was barely pulled back. Countess Yong suddenly burst into tears. Not only did you force my sister to die, but you also want to force Yuru to die. How can you be so cruel? My poor sister, you married into Qin's mansion for so many years, but you entered a wolf's den. No wonder you died at such a young age. Died? Qin Huayong sneered and waved the sword in his hand in front of Countess Yong. The sharp cold light made Countess Yong's face turn pale. It was one thing to know that Qin Huayong dared not to do it, but another thing to see the sword chi. Countess Yong felt weak in her legs and almost fell. Madame D died in the hands of Qin Yuru. If you have any problem, go to her. Qin Huayong said sharply. As soon as he said that, everyone was shocked. Xiao Wanru calmly glanced at Qin Huayong, who was about to lose his mind with anger. Countess Yong's words made his suppressed anger burst out. She had been thinking about how to make Qin Huayong speak, but now she didn't need to. Countess Yong, who was fearless, was really a good helper. Father, how can you say that? Qin Yuru was the first to come to her senses. Although she couldn't believe that it was Qin Huayong who said that, she had to pretend to be devastated. She had thought that even if Qin Huayong found out that she did it, he would definitely protect her. Qin Huayong pretended to be ignorant about all the things Xiao Wanru did. He knew it clearly, but he pretended not to know and stood by her side wholeheartedly. He used to be like this, so how could it be different now? If others knew that her biological daughter killed her mother, she would lose her life. How could Qin Huayong really want to kill her? Wrong, there must be a mistake. Didn't you deliberately burn Madame D to death? As soon as he said that, Qin Huayong also regretted it. But with so many people hearing it, it was not the time to regret, so he could only sneer and say. Shui Rulan's body shook and she almost fainted. She was kind-hearted and had never thought of such a thing. Although there was no evidence, she believed what Qin Huayong said. Aunt Shui, don't be afraid. Qin Yuru will not approach you and Brother Xian. You will be fine. Xiao Wanru helped her up and said in a low voice. Her voice was not loud, but Qin Huayong, who was standing on the side, heard her clearly in the eerie silence. His heartbeat sped up and he made a decision in his heart. Qin Yuru was not his daughter, so his only child was Brother Xian. He could not allow Qin Yuru to hurt Shui Rulan and Brother Xian. Given Qin Yuru's viciousness and the reputation of his daughter, if she took advantage of his absence to secretly deal with Shui Rulan and Brother Xian, she would definitely harm them. He was about to go to the Su kingdom, so he could not let Qin Yuru's scourge live. Even if he was disgraced today, he could not let Shui Rulan and Brother Xian be harmed by Qin Yuru. Qin Huayong's previous annoyance faded as the balance in his heart was shaken. He had to expose the fact that Qin Yuru was not his daughter even if it would make him lose face and make others feel that he had been cuckolded. Otherwise, there would be endless troubles in the future. Moreover, old Prince Hezong was involved in it. Qin Huayong sensitively felt that it was not a trivial matter. It involved the royal family. Which one was not a trivial matter? Father, do you really want to force me to die? Is it because you have a son that you don't want a daughter? Qin Yuru was extremely sad and indignant. She covered her chest in disbelief and looked at Qin Huayong as if she wanted to see through how cruel Qin Huayong was. Brother-in-law, how can your mansion be so cruel? No matter what my sister has done, she is your legal wife. No matter how bad Yuru is, she is your daughter. In order to shirk the responsibility, you actually put the blame on Yuru. How biased you are. You spoil the concubine and destroy the wife. You spoil the concubine and destroy the wife. Countess Yong immediately helped Qin Huayong and had a faint bad feeling in her heart. Qin Huayong did not have such an attitude in the past. What was wrong with him today? Was it really Qin Yuru who did it? Countess Yong had never thought Qin Yuru was good. At this time, she immediately believed it. Thinking that she had let Qin Yuru be her daughter-in-law for 3 years, Countess Yong felt terrified and increasingly felt that she could not let Qin Yuru return to Duke Yong's mansion. If she quarreled with her one day, she might kill her and then set fire to the mansion. Brother-in-law. Who is your brother-in-law? Duke Yong, don't think that I don't know anything. You have kept it from me for so long because you intend to make me the scapegoat, right? Okay, let's not argue today. Let's directly report it to the court and let the capital governor judge it. At this time, Qin Huaiyong also threw away his face and went to the court. His face changed from blue to white, and he suddenly shouted. Duke Yong's face changed dramatically. He heard some bad news from Qin Huaiyong's words. He had no time to panic, stepped forward a few steps, and grabbed Qin Huaiyong's hand that was holding the sword. Brother-in-law, if this matter is spread out, both of our families will lose face. We'd better discuss it slowly. Discuss it slowly? How to discuss it? Discuss it because you have kept it from me and made me the scapegoat. Qin Huaiyong sneered. Thinking that for so many years, he had treated Qin Yuru as his own daughter and was not willing to let her be wronged in anything, he was so angry that his eyes turned red. The more tolerant he was to Qin Yuru before, the more he hated at this time. But now he hated Duke Yong's mansion more. If it weren't for them, he wouldn't have been cuckolded for so many years. The way he looked at Duke Yong was like a raging fire, as if he was going to burn Duke Yong with it. General. Shu Rulan reached out to pull Qin Huaiyong's sleeve. Xiao Wanru reached out and tugged at the corner of her clothes, indicating that she should not move now. Shu Rulan hesitated for a moment and did not reach out her hand again. There was a hidden meaning in these words. Even if she did not know, she had a faint feeling that the secret was about to be exposed. Duke Yong's mansion, Madame D, Qin Yuru, you are all very good. Now I am willing to sacrifice my dignity. What else is there to discuss? Qin Huaiyong shouted angrily. Brother-in-law. Brother-in-law, let's talk about it. Duke Yong softened. Brother-in-law, we are a family. You can't solve the problem even if you are so angry. No matter what Yuru did, she is your biological daughter. As her biological father, do you want to send your biological daughter to the guillotine? Countess Yong's face also softened and she persuaded him. Her words also meant that she agreed that Qin Yuru killed Madame D. Mother, I didn't. Qin Yuru was furious and secretly hated Countess Yong, the old bitch. How could she bear such a crime? Even if she was a member of the royal family now, she could not do it. Servants, see the guests out. Qin Huaiyong ignored them and said sharply. A few strong servants came up and were about to push the people of Duke Yong's mansion out. Qin Huaiyong, what do you mean? Duke Yong, who was pushed twice by an old maid, was furious. He pushed the old maid in front of him away and rushed over angrily. See you in court. Qin Huaiyong said contemptuously. Although he also valued his reputation, he was a military general and did not value it as much as a civil official. Brother-in-law, what on earth do you want? How can you make this matter worse? Seeing Qin Huaiyong's posture, Duke Yong knew that Qin Huaiyong was really ready to risk everything. He did not dare to do it again and his voice also softened. We have been in-laws for so many years. How can we make such a big fuss at this time and let others laugh at us? Yes, brother-in-law, my previous words were a little impulsive because I suddenly heard the news of my sister's death. I was a little impulsive for a moment. Please forgive me, brother-in-law. Countess Yong's attitude became softer and there was even a trace of a smile on her face. But brother-in-law, you are also wrong. It is such a big thing that my sister is dead. How can you casually push the blame to Yuru? She is a woman. Such a crime will force her to death. Duke Yong said with a look of pity for Qin Yuru. It seemed that Qin Yuru would definitely die because of Qin Huaiyong's words. I won't stop until she is dead. Qin Huaiyong turned around contemptuously. He was afraid that if he saw the hateful eyes of Duke Yong and Countess Yong again, he could not help but want to punish them. Drive them away. Hearing Qin Huaiyong still gave such an order, the servants of Qin's mansion did not hesitate anymore. They came over and beat Duke Yong and Countess Yong shamelessly, forcing them to retreat step by step. Although Duke Yong's mansion brought a lot of people, they were not as many as those of Qin's mansion. The people of Duke Yong's mansion were beaten until they cried for their parents and were driven out of Ningyuan army general's mansion. Many busybodies stood at the gate of the mansion. When Duke Yong's mansion came before, they did not intend to hide their traces and waited outside to watch the fun. Seeing that the people of Duke Yong's mansion were beaten out in such a way and were in a mess, everyone burst into laughter. Duke Yong's mansion had a bad reputation recently. Let's go. Standing at the gate of Ningyuan army general's mansion, Duke Yong fiercely wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes and angrily led the people of Duke Yong's mansion back. He submitted a memorial to Qin Huayong, accusing him of spoiling his concubine and neglecting his wife, to let Qin Huayong know that his mansion was not so easy to bully. Seeing the people of Duke Yong's mansion leave, Qin Huayong also asked his servant to go out to report it to the official, and then helped old Madame Qin back. Along the way, they were very silent, as if there were no other sounds except for the sound of their feet stepping on the ground. The hearts of the people of Qin's mansion were so heavy that they could hardly breathe. Xiao Wanru held the other side of old Madame Qin and lowered her eyes to help old Madame Qin back. After everyone sat down in the main room, Xiao Wanru said, "Grandma, General Qin, Aunt Shui, if there is nothing else, I will go back first." This was the time for the people of Qin's mansion to sit down and discuss things. She was now an outsider, so it was inappropriate for her to stay. Of course, the so-called inappropriate was just on the surface. She believed that Qin Huayong would keep her, an inappropriate outsider. Chapter 949. Your Highness, you are not an outsider. Please stay. Qin Huayong bowed to Xiao Wanru and said in a gentle voice. There was an inexplicable regret in his eyes. Well, okay. Xiao Wanru hesitated for a while and decided not to be polite anymore. She had lived in the Qin's mansion for so many years. Although she was not a member of the Qin's mansion now, she basically knew everything about the Qin's mansion. It would only be good for the Qin's mansion if she stayed at this time. Your Highness, you'd better go back. This kind of thing is not suitable. Old Madame Qin shook her head. Mother, what I want to say is really of great importance. When your Highness was here, I was repeatedly deceived by Madame D and her daughter. Now the truth has been revealed, and it can be regarded as justice for your Highness. Qin Huayong lowered his head with a trace of indescribable pain. Shui Rulan looked at old Madame Qin and then at Qin Huayong, not knowing what to say for a moment. Grandma, I also want to hear it. It's not troublesome. Xiao Wanru comforted old Madame Qin in a soft voice. She was sincerely grateful to old Madame Qin. Even if there was no blood relationship, old Madame Qin had always been her grandmother. Seeing that she and Qin Huayong were so persistent, old Madame Qin nodded helplessly. After everyone sat down, Qin Huayong waved his hand and the servants in the room left together. Mother, there is something I just learned, but I have to say it now, lest Rulan and you will be manipulated by Duke Yong's mansion. After the servants left, Qin Huayong said straightforwardly. What is it? Say it. Old Madame Qin sat up straight. She had realized that this matter was not simple. Qin Huayong's loss of composure just now should have something to do with this matter. Mother, Qin Yuru is not my daughter. It's Madame D who married me with another man. Qin Huayong was extremely sad and indignant. No one could bear such a thing happening to a man and being forced to such a point. What did you say? Old Madame Qin looked at Qin Huayong in shock. Her lips trembled twice before she made a sound. General, this is not something you dare to say. Shui Rulan's face was pale and her fingers were convulsing with the handkerchief in her hand. Xiao Wanru was very calm. She looked at Qin Huayong with a pair of watery eyes with a little curiosity. Although there was also surprise in her eyes, it was very faint and almost non-existent. Being stared at by such a pair of eyes, Qin Huayong felt even more embarrassed. Xiao Wanru used to be his daughter, and he had raised her for so many years. How could he have no feelings for her? If it weren't for Madame D and her daughter, how could they be strangers now? At that time in Duke Xing's mansion, he protected Qin Yuru again and again in the end, which could be regarded as breaking the relationship between father and daughter. Thinking of this, Qin Huayong gnashed his teeth in hatred. It was not only because he had been cuckolded. Mother, it's true. Qin Yuru burned Madame D to death because she recognized her biological father. She wanted to suppress this matter. Of course, it's also possible that she got some benefits from her biological father and wanted to control our mansion. Qin Huayong sneered and his eyes were red with anger. How could this be possible? Really, old Madame Qin's fingers were trembling. How could such an absurd thing be true? How could there be such a shameless person in the world? But looking at her son's expression, old Madame Qin felt that it must be true. How could this be? Madame D. Madame D. Shui Rulin said, but she didn't know what she wanted to say. Did it? Mother, I won't hide it anymore. Since it has been reported to the official, I will expose it. Mother, Rulin, please check the inner courtyard. Find out what happened before and after Qin Yuru left and who was there at that time. These are all evidence. Except for Qin Yuru, no one has been to Madame D's courtyard. Before she walked out of the Qin's mansion, Madame D's place had been burned. Qin Huayong calmed down and said, Okay, I will send someone to check it right away. Old Madame Qin, who had experienced many hardships, calmed down and said with a sigh of relief. General, in the future, you. Shui Rulin said worriedly. I'll be fine. Qin Huayong knew that Shui Rulin was worried about his reputation, so he shook his head. After the matter was settled, he would leave. It would be several months before he came back, and the matter would fade away. If he made some more contributions, no one would look down on him in the future. The most important thing for a man was power. This little mistake was nothing. The most important thing was that he had a son now, and his son was still young. A little damage to his reputation was not a big deal. Rulin, help me find out what happened in the backyard. As for the front. Qin Huayong said, paused for a moment and glanced at Xiao Wanru's face. He told such a big secret, but Xiao Wanru only looked surprised. She was much calmer than old Madame Qin and Shui Rulin. If she was still his daughter, even if she was his daughter in name, thinking of this, Qin Huayong immediately gave up this very tempting idea. Without this assumption, he couldn't put this kind of thing on an imaginary assumption. Just like how he always favored his biological daughter in the beginning, he would not let his biological daughter feel wronged because of his soft-heartedness. It was just that he took it for granted at that time, but now he thought of it with deep ridicule. Qin Wanru is the daughter of Prince Heching's fourth son. She is the bastard child of Madame D who was unfaithful before marriage and Chu Huairan. After Madame D told Qin Yuru about this, Qin Yuru went to Prince Heching's mansion. Now they should have recognized each other. Qin Huayong said coldly with burning anger in his eyes. He naturally knew about what had happened to Prince Heching's fourth son, Chu Huairan. A few days ago, he had even met this old Silk Pants. Together with a few other Silk Pants, they had called a few brothel girls over and caused some trouble. He had even taken care of them when he was passing by with the imperial guards. At that time, he even secretly laughed at this so-called imperial son. With such a good-for-nothing appearance, even the old Prince Kazuo lost face. So what if he was the emperor's younger uncle? He gave birth to such a scourge and lost all the face of his family. Thinking of it now, he was so angry that his face turned livid. He suddenly remembered that at that time, Chu Huairan looked at his face sideways in a drunken state and repeatedly asked the people beside him with a faint smile if he was Ningyuan army general. At that time, he thought that it was because of his reputation that he asked. Prince Heching's fourth son. Old Madame Qin was shocked to the point of numbness. She repeated the sentence, what should we do now? Mother, you and Rulin can deal with the affairs in the inner court. I will go to the outer court to deal with it. Mother, don't worry. We have the upper hand in this matter. I will not let Duke Yong's mansion or Prince Heching's mansion live an easy life. Qin Huayong stood up and said goodbye to Madame Dowager. Then he cupped his hands to Xiao Wanru and said, "Please take care of my mother, Your Highness." "General, go ahead." Xiao Wanru nodded with a smile. Qin Huayong turned around and left. He would never let this matter go. The more trouble he made, the better. He was a general who was going to be sent as an envoy. At this time, the emperor would not hurt his heart. Duke Yong did not follow Countess Yong back to the mansion. He left quietly on the way and secretly went to Prince Yu's mansion. After entering Prince Yu's mansion through the back door, he went directly to Chu Liyue's study. In the study, Chu Liyue looked at Duke Yong with a cold face. After he told him what had happened just now, he said coldly, "Who is your sister's adulterer?" Just now, Duke Yong only told him about Qin Huayong's reaction in Qin's mansion, but he did not mention these old things. This kind of thing was not a glorious thing, and Duke Yong was too ashamed to mention it. Hearing Chu Liyue's question, Duke Yong's face darkened, but he still shook his head and said, "I don't know about it. Only my mother and sister know it. At that time, when I knew it, it was too late. You don't even know this kind of thing. How can you be in charge of the mansion?" Chu Liyue said sharply, "If I had known that your mansion was so unruly, I would not have put you in an important position at that time. Now seeing that you have caused so much trouble, I have to help you get through this matter." "Your Highness." Duke Yong knelt down with a thud and said, "Your Highness, please save me." "I can't save you this time," Chu Liyue said harshly. Now he really hated Duke Yong very much, and he was afraid that this matter would not end well. The matter of Duke Yong's mansion could not stand the investigation. Last time, he finally got through with it, and this time, it would not end well. "Your Highness, help!" Duke Yong cried and said, "I am your subordinate. Your Highness, you don't want me to be found out that I have raised so many women in private, right? Are you threatening me?" Chu Liyue sneered, grabbed an inkstone by his hand, and smashed it heavily on Duke Yong's head. Immediately, blood came out of Duke Yong's forehead and flowed down. If possible, Chu Liyue really intended to smash Duke Yong to death like this. Thinking of this, he suddenly had an idea and calmed down. "Go back first, find out who your sister's adulterer is, and then report it to me. It should not be an ordinary person, right? Since he has given birth to a child with your sister, he can't ignore the affairs of your mansion." Yes, Your Highness, I will go to my mother and ask her right now," Duke Yong said in a panic. He was really panicked now. The affairs inside and outside the mansion were in a mess, and he didn't know how to deal with it. Chu Liyue's words seemed to point out a bright way for him, so he nodded repeatedly. Chu Liyue threw a handkerchief to his head and said, "Go back first, and act fast. Don't let the government be faster than you." "Yes, I know." Duke Yong stood up, staggered, and almost fell down. Chu Liyue reached out to help him, and said in a more friendly voice, "Duke Yong, are you okay? This king was really too angry just now." "Your Highness, don't worry. I am fine." Duke Yong shook his head repeatedly. Prince Yu did not abandon him, which made him suddenly have a backbone. "Go to Prince Zhou's mansion first, and then to Prince Xian's mansion. Don't go to Prince Chen's mansion." Chu Liyue thought for a while and slowly ordered. "I understand," Duke Yong said. He had done this kind of thing many times in the past. He was afraid that someone would find out that Prince Yu deliberately confused others. Duke Yong used to do things so carefully. Chu Liyue nodded. Watching Duke Yong stagger away, his eyes were cold, and he slowly ordered, "Keep an eye on him." Chapter 950. Duke Yong went to the back door of Prince Zhou's mansion as usual. In fact, he did not go in but asked a servant to knock on the back door. The coachman found an excuse to go inside and came out after a long time. After that, he went to Prince Xian's mansion again. This time, he entered from the front door and asked someone to send an invitation card. But Chu Liuxin did not see him. Later, Duke Yong's carriage turned to Commandery Prince Qing's mansion. When the servant of Commandery Prince Qing's mansion reported to Chu Qing, he was stunned for a moment and then was overjoyed. He immediately asked someone to invite Duke Yong in. Although Duke Yong was not powerful, there were few nobles in the capital city who were friendly to Chu Qing. Chu Qing would not let go of any of them. After entering, Duke Yong bowed to Chu Qing and said straightforwardly, "Your Highness, I have something important to ask of you." "What's the matter?" Chu Qing asked in surprise. He really did not understand why Duke Yong, who never came to visit him in the past, wanted to ask him for something. If it was just an ordinary matter, he did not mind intervening. "Your Highness, please help my son restore the position of heir of Duke Yong." Duke Yong stood up and said in a trembling voice with tears in his eyes, "Today, I have gone to several mansions and want to ask them to help me submit memorials to restore my son's position as heir of Duke Yong." Chu Qing did not know how Di Yan lost the position of heir of Duke Yong, but it sounded that it was not a simple matter. He immediately comforted him gently, "Duke Yong, don't worry." "What did the other brothers say?" "The prince is mean." Duke Yong choked and could not say anything. He looked very pale and should mean that they did not pay attention to him. Although Chu Qing had a smile on his face, there was some sarcasm in his eyes. No wonder he came to him. If those princes were willing to agree, there would be nothing for him to do. Now they ignored him and came to him for help. Duke Yong had never been so solicitous. He came to him when he needed something. It was really hateful. "Duke Yong, go back first. If my brothers submit memorials, I will definitely stand on your side," Chu Qing said. In fact, this was no different from not saying anything. If someone was participating in the dungeon, he would say a few words. If no one was participating in the dungeon, he would not say anything. Such an answer would not cause any harm to Chu Qing. "Your Highness." Duke Yong still wanted to say something, but he was interrupted by Chu Qing rudely, "Duke Yong, you'd better go back first. I've made up my mind on this matter. I still have something to do here, so I won't keep you here." In the past, Duke Yong did not come to his place to burn incense but always came to him when he had something to do. Chu Qing was extremely dissatisfied with Duke Yong. Moreover, this was not a trivial matter. If it was just a trivial and ordinary matter, he would have done it. Although Duke Yong was not very useful, he had some old friends. As nobles, sometimes they would feel sorry for each other. It was possible for him to make a name for himself among these nobles with the help of Duke Yong's mansion. But the problem was that Duke Yong's mansion was not easy to deal with. After thinking for a while, Chu Qing felt that it was not appropriate for him to intervene in it. The others didn't intend to interfere. Did they think they were stupid? "Yes. Thank you, Your Highness." Duke Yong was sent out with red eyes. When he arrived at the gate of the mansion, he took a deep breath, calmed down his expression, and then turned to his carriage. When he got on the carriage, he went directly back to Duke Yong's mansion this time. In broad daylight, a fire suddenly broke out, and it was said that someone was burned to death. After the emperor heard about this in the imperial study, he asked someone to summon Qin Huaiyong to see him. The fire usually broke out at night, and it always broke out during the day. Moreover, a madam with honorary title was burned to death. "Minister Qin, what's the cause? Did someone want to hurt your madam?" When the emperor saw Qin Huaiyong, he asked directly. After Qin Huaiyong knelt down, he began to cry, but he couldn't say a word. "Is there something fishy?" At the sight of Qin Huaiyong's appearance, the emperor knew that something was really wrong, and his face changed slightly at once. "Your Highness." After Qin Huaiyong called out, he cried again. "General Qin, take your time, and the emperor will definitely uphold justice for you." An elegant voice sounded, with a bit of soothing gentleness. Qin Huaiyong wiped away his tears, looked up, and found that not only the emperor was in the imperial study, but also Prince Chen was there. "Thank you, Your Highness." "Thank you, Prince Chen. I have something to say, but I don't know how to say it." Your Highness, I feel wronged, and I regret it. Qin Huayong cried. It seemed that he couldn't say it, and he reached out to hit his chest hard, which made a banging sound. It could be seen that he really hit hard. Regret? Is it because of you that your madam died today? The emperor's face changed and he said. If it was really Qin Huayong who did it, he would definitely be punished. Even if Qin Huayong was going to the Su kingdom soon, he couldn't bear it. General Qin, you'd better make it clear, and I will make a fair judgment for you. Chu Luqian said lazily. His voice had always been gentle and pleasant in normal times, but Qin Huayong didn't dare to underestimate this Prince Chen. He had been dealing with this Prince Chen for several years, and they met in Jiangzhou. This prince was definitely not gentle and handsome as he looked on the surface. In fact, he just used a gentle look to cover it up. Prince Chen was definitely poisonous, and it was the kind of great poison that covered up his nature with a special beauty. He didn't dare to really take Prince Chen's superficial gentleness as a sign of goodwill. Thank you, Your Highness. After Qin Huayong thanked Chu Luqian, he kowtowed to the emperor and said, Your Highness, I regret marrying Madame D's daughter that day, and I want to break off my relationship with Duke Yong's mansion. Break off your relationship? Does this matter have something to do with Duke Yong's mansion? The emperor said. He understood some meaning and put down the booklet in his hand. Your Highness, the former young madam of Duke Yong is not my daughter. I have raised her for so many years. This time when Qin Yuru returned to the mansion, she knew that she was not my biological daughter, so she burned her biological mother to death. Qin Huayong said in full detail. After that, he punched his chest fiercely several times. Because he punched so hard that blood appeared at the corner of his mouth, it could be seen that he was very resentful. Your daughter, the daughter you have raised for so long is not your biological daughter? The emperor didn't understand for a while. After thinking for a while, he subconsciously looked at Chu Luqian. He remembered that the fifth Miss Xiao of Marquis Xing's mansion had been found by Qin Huayong at that time, and it could be said that she was his daughter who had been raised for so many years. Uncle, it's not my princess. It's the one who always had conflicts with my princess before. She and Madame D even tried to kill my princess together. At that time, it was also this first Miss Qin who went to Marquis Xing's mansion in a hurry, and also uncle's marriage selection. Banquet. Chu Luqian said, glancing at Qin Huayong with a bit of light and deep meaning. In fact, the emperor knew all these things. But at that time, because things happened one by one, he did not have a deep feeling about it. At this time, after Chu Luqian strung them together, he immediately frowned tightly. He remembered that Prince Cheng was originally forced to get married, which could be regarded as relieving one of his worries, which was that his marriage was ruined by a shameless woman. As for Princess Chen, she was almost killed by this woman. At that time, Xiao Wanru had nothing to do with the emperor, so she just heard it. Now hearing it again, she immediately snorted coldly and said, Ning Yuan army general really dotes on this daughter. If she were born in an ordinary family, she would not have survived. Such a vicious and shameless woman in an ordinary family would have been strangled with a rope long ago, so as not to harm others. Your Majesty, she is not my daughter. I raised her for someone else. Thinking of the past, Qin Huayong was ashamed, and he really hated his own Qi Dun. If he knew that Madame D was not a woman, he would not be partial to Qin Yuru, to the extent of alienating the current Princess Chen. Someone else's daughter. The emperor repeated it and then remembered what Qin Huayong said before. How did Minister Qin know it? You didn't know it for so many years, but suddenly you know it? A servant girl in my mansion heard it. Today, after Qin Yuru returned to the mansion, she went to see Madame D. When they were talking in the room, the servant girl happened to hear it. She heard Madame D admit that Qin Yuru was not my daughter, but, speaking of this, Qin Huayong covered his face and cried again, Your Majesty, please uphold justice for me. He didn't want to bear the responsibility for this matter, nor did he want to admit it. Since Madame D dared to do it, he dared to say it. As a general, he didn't care about the so-called face. Thinking that Madame D had been lying to him for so many years, Qin Huayong couldn't wait to drag Madame D up and burn her bones to ashes. Even if Madame D didn't die in the hands of Qin Yuru this time, he would not allow her to live. Your Majesty, for so many years, I have only 1 year, and I have always doted on her, but I didn't expect that she is the daughter of the 4th son of Prince Heqing. After Qin Yuru knew this, she asked Madame D to take out some evidence, and then left with the evidence. When she left, she should have thrown a fire and burned Madame D alive. The servant girl in my mansion wanted to keep an eye on her, so she didn't notice her movements. When she arrived at the back door, it was already very hot. Even if he was Prince Heqing, even if he was a relative of the royal family, Qin Huayong would drag him down this time. Since he lost his face, Prince Heqing's mansion would not have a good ending. As long as he thought of how many things he had borne for Qin Yuru over the years and how much he had been ridiculed, he couldn't wait to chop this shameless couple together with Qin Yuru. The 4th son of Prince Heqing. The emperor didn't remember there was such a person at the moment. This person didn't make any progress, and in the past, he couldn't get in front of the emperor. Uncle, he is a playboy. Usually, he likes to fight with other playboys for women. Occasionally, he uses the name of Prince Heqing to bully others. He hasn't done anything good for so many years, but he has a lot of women. Many of the sons and daughters of concubines in the mansion are all his, and outside, there should also be some. Chu Luchin explained faintly. It would have been better if he didn't say it. Once he said it, the emperor flew into a rage. He slammed his hand on the table and said sternly, Prince Heqing. This kind of person happened to be the kind of person that the emperor hated the most. Chapter 951. Old Prince He came quickly. He was the chief of the Royal Imperial Clan Office and was in charge of the affairs of the royal family. Speaking of it, it was just some miscellaneous affairs. He was not in charge of the specific affairs of the imperial court. Basically, he did not go to the imperial court. He only went to the imperial court meeting on the first day of every month. In the past, when there was nothing to do, he would not go to the emperor. Basically, it was a leisurely but noble profession. It only worked at specific times. Of course, this specific time was sometimes very important. Your Majesty. Prince He stepped forward and saluted. Uncle, please get up. The emperor helped him up personally and asked someone to give him a seat. Your Majesty, I am guilty. Prince He did not get up. Instead, he kowtowed to the emperor 3 times and said with tears. Uncle, please get up and talk. The emperor said gently. Your Majesty, I am really ashamed. I am not worthy of being the chief of the Chu clan. I have given birth to an unfilial son. He actually violated the family rules, actually. Prince He could not go on. His old tears flowed down. His look of regret and hatred was no less than that of Qin Huayong. Chu Luchin tilted his head and looked at Prince He with indifferent eyes. He looked at him with interest. He was quite smart to play this trick. Compared with a strong denial, the emperor agreed with the current behavior. Sure enough, the emperor's expression became more and more amiable. He asked the little eunuch to help Prince Heqing to sit on the side, and then said pleasantly, Imperial uncle, what's going on? I really don't quite understand. Your Majesty, please listen to this official. This official's unfilial son has never made any progress, but he's not the heir of Great Liang. This official thought of letting him eat and wait for his death. Anyway, I'll just take it as raising another prodigal son. I didn't expect that he would produce an illegitimate son and daughter from time to time. He had one before, and now he has one again. This official actually doesn't know whether it's true or not. Your Majesty, my family affairs have shamed you. Prince He sat down and wiped his tears. He was still ashamed. The so-called family affairs were, of course, trivial. Moreover, from what old Prince He said, he did not recognize Qin Yuru's identity. This was even better, especially since the fourth master did not have a good private life. He had also been involved in such similar things. Later, he denied it. With the previous things, it was even more difficult to distinguish whether Qin Yuru's matter was true or not. Chu Luqian narrowed his eyes slightly, lazily picked up the teacup at hand, took a sip, and continued to listen. Prince He, what do you mean by that? Could it be that you don't recognize this granddaughter of yours? When Qin Huayong heard this, he was furious. He had just explained everything clearly in front of the emperor. But now, Prince Hefei didn't admit it. Not only did he overturn his previous words, he even had the intention of deceiving the emperor. Ningyuan Army General, I'm really sorry about this. But I've asked my son before, and he said he didn't know whether she was his daughter or not. At that time, they were really. It's that bastard's fault. Even if your majesty wants to kill him, it's okay to compensate Ningyuan Army General. Anyway, that bastard has never had a good life and has always embarrassed me. Speaking of this, Prince He cried aggrievedly. As a father, it was indeed infuriating to see his son not making any progress and getting involved in such affairs from time to time. It was normal for him to say anything in a fit of anger, but it was different for others. If he really took Chu Huairan's life because of such a matter, how would others look at the emperor? The royal family was a distant relative. There were plenty of clansmen who didn't grow up. How could they take his life because of such a thing? If they could really do that, it would be too much. Qin Huayong was so angry that his face turned pale. Your Majesty, please help me. He kowtowed heavily to the ground. This person from Duke Yong's mansion. The emperor frowned. He didn't know how to address Qin Yuru. He could only say vaguely, is she really not your biological granddaughter? I don't know. This bastard can't say it clearly himself. Prince He burst into tears. The bloodline of the royal family could not be mixed. How could it be said by others? Your Majesty, there is such a thing. But Madame D didn't say she was pregnant at that time. As for Duke Yong's mansion, she didn't say it either. Later, Madame D got married, and this bastard didn't take it seriously. So this matter. I don't know how to deal with it. Your Majesty said that if you admit it, you can admit it. It's just one more person in the mansion. This was kicking the matter to the emperor. Madame D was dead. Chu Huairan insisted that she was not. Who could say that she was? Chu Luqian was not surprised by this result. Old Prince He seemed to be incompetent, but in fact, he was a smart person. Otherwise, with so many relatives, the title of Grand Master would not fall on his head. Your Majesty, please help me. Qin Huayong interrupted angrily again. Your Majesty, please help me. Prince He said with a trembling voice, as if he had been deeply shocked and wanted to push all the blame to the emperor. Your Majesty, Prince He was not upright and did not teach his son well. Your Majesty, please reprimand Prince He. Prince He's granddaughter set fire to Madame D. She is vicious. Your Majesty, please punish her. Qin Huayong increased the intensity. What? Ju. She actually burned her own mother to death. Qin Wang couldn't sit still and knelt down at the foot of the chair with a plop. A vicious woman that could even burn her own mother. Your Majesty, this subject doesn't dare to accept her. This subject is afraid that it's someone else's scheme. Not to mention that that evil spawn might not be my biological father. Even if it was, he might lose his life because of this. The lives of this old subject's entire household. Old Prince He became more and more panicked as he spoke, and his face turned pale. It was not certain whether Chu Huairan was her biological father, but it was certain that Madame D was Qin Yuru's biological mother. If she was so cruel to her biological mother who raised her, how could she be soft-hearted to her father who had never raised her? It was possible that she would hate Prince He to death. Of course, this also meant that he knew nothing about Qin Yuru. Qin Huayong was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. Originally, Prince Heyuan's mansion was sorry to him, but now it seemed that he was sorry to Prince Heyuan. Tell Ningyuan Army General that first Miss Qin came to Prince Heyuan before. I don't know what she said to Prince Heyuan. Chu Lulu said lazily. His voice was gentle, which eased the tense atmosphere in the imperial study. She took the token of Madame D and the bastard. It was indeed the bastard who gave it to Madame D. At that time, he was young. The bastard was even more young and inexperienced. I accepted the token and asked the bastard. He said it was him, but he didn't know whether it was his blood or not, so he asked first Miss Qin to go back first. I originally wanted to report this matter to your majesty, but I didn't expect to hear that first Miss Qin burned her biological mother to death. Your majesty, I dare not accept her. Old Prince Heyuan had tears in his eyes and a runny nose. He looked extremely pitiful. Whether it was the blood of the Chu family, he naturally didn't recognize it. It seemed that if he recognized Qin Yuru, his whole mansion would be poisoned by Qin Yuru. Ningyuan Army General, it is indeed my vile child's fault. But when they met, Madame D was not married to you yet. She also said that she was not engaged to you. Later, they did something wrong and separated. After that, there was no news from each other. Now she suddenly has a daughter. That vile child really doesn't dare to admit it. Prince Heyuan turned to Qin Huayong again, feeling guilty and sad. Your Majesty, Madame D personally said that she is not my daughter. Qin Huayong was so angry that he gnashed his teeth. He really wanted to beat Prince Heyuan, who was pretending. It's hard to believe only from the words of a servant girl. I heard that Madame D did not have a good life in Ningyuan Army General's mansion. Prince Heyuan argued. Let Qin Yuru say it herself. Qin Huayong said sternly. First Miss Qin will definitely say that she is the blood of the Chu family now. I heard that first Miss Qin loved vanity when she was in the boudoir. At that time, she could marry into Duke Yong's mansion because she refused the previous engagement. Now I heard that she may be the royal family. How can she care about the general's mansion? Prince Heyuan wiped his tears and looked extremely pitiful. Of course, he meant that he would not recognize Qin Yuru. No matter whether Qin Yuru was his son's blood or not, he could not recognize her. He thought it was profitable before. Now, after Qin Huayong made such a scene, Prince Heyuan felt that he was not short of granddaughters. How could he recognize a granddaughter who had lost her reputation? Uncle, old madam of Duke Yong should know. Chu Luchen said lightly, with a trace of sarcasm flashing in his eyes. One refused to recognize it, and the other insisted on not recognizing it. One could imagine Qin Yuru's ending. Old Madam of Duke Yongxian. The emperor nodded and felt that this was the only way. Uncle, I will go to see Imperial Grandmother. Chu Luchen stood up, glanced at the two people who were in a stalemate on the ground, and said. Okay, you can go. The emperor nodded. This matter gave him a headache, but he had to deal with it. No matter who admitted Qin Yuru, he would not be able to escape the crime of killing his own mother. This vicious woman would ruin the reputation of whoever's mansion she belonged to. This was the most important reason why no one recognized her. Your Majesty, you can't. Old Madam of Duke Yongxian must have the same explanation with General Qin. This. Prince Heyuan was a little flustered. He really did not want to recognize Qin Yuru. Prince Heyuan, since it is my uncle who has the final say, you'd better listen to him. Chu Luchen glanced at Prince Heyuan and said as he walked out. Prince Heyuan was choked by him and couldn't speak for a while. He had said before that this matter was all decided by the emperor. If he raised an objection now, it would definitely make the emperor unhappy. His eyes fell on Chu Luchen, who was walking out of the door, and he was secretly shocked. He had really looked down on this Prince Chen before. Master, Prince Yu has entered the palace. Xiao Xuanzi walked to Chu Luchen, who was walking out of the imperial study, and reported in a low voice. Where did he go? Chu Luchen flicked his sleeves and asked gently. In the direction that you said. Do you want to go and have a look? Xiao Xuanzi lowered his voice. No, let him go. Chu Luqian smiled slightly, raised his handsome eyes, looked in that direction, and turned to the direction of the Palace of Benevolent Peace. Chu Luyue came, it was good. Chapter 952. Chu Luyue did enter the palace, but not long after he left, he was invited by someone. The person who invited him was Moyan, who was standing behind the flowers by the roadside. Seeing Chu Luyue coming over, she hurriedly stepped forward to salute and then signaled him to follow her with her eyes. Chu Luyue hesitated for a moment, but still left with her. Moyan was Xiao Yenru's personal maid, and she used to be responsible for delivering messages for him and Xiao Yenru, so they were naturally familiar with each other. After a few turns, they came to a remote courtyard. The so-called palace was a small courtyard, which was usually used for people in the palace to put some sundries. There were only a few small rooms. The door of the main room was open, and Xiao Yenru was standing at the door. Seeing Chu Luyue, she excitedly lifted the corner of her dress and ran down. Because she ran in a hurry, she seemed to kick something, staggered in front of Chu Luyue, and almost fell down. Chu Luyue subconsciously reached out to help her. Xiao Yenru fell into his arms, raised her head, looked at him with tears in her eyes, and said affectionately, "Your Highness." Xiao Yenru was very beautiful, with a jade-like face and red lips, which reflected the ordinary and old clothes she wore today. She was wearing a light pink dress with a jade-white dress, and there were only a few small beads on the edge of the dress. It could be seen that the material of the dress was not very good, just an ordinary palace maid's material. But because she was as beautiful as jade, even if it was a simple material, it still looked attractive. What was more, the beauty was still leaning in his arms, fragrant and warm. Her watery eyes were full of affection, but also entangled with pain. It could be seen that Xiao Yenru did not have a good life in the palace. She had lost a lot of weight, and her chin was pointed and lovable. Chu Luyue looked down at Xiao Yenru in his arms. He did not push her away, nor did he speak. "Your Highness." Xiao Yenru looked at him eagerly again. When she was about to say something, 2 lines of tears slowly fell down. Even a stone-hearted person would be a little soft-hearted when seeing the beauty in front of him so aggrieved and sad, not to mention that Chu Luyue also had some affection for Xiao Yenru. The coldness in his eyes slowly faded. Xiao Yenru cried out again, "Your Highness." She suddenly pushed Chu Luyue away and said, "Your Highness, I just want to see you again. I just want to see you again. In the future, even if we are separated forever, Your Highness will always be in my heart. I have no regrets in this life. If there is a next life, Your Highness must marry me early in the next life." Xiao Yenru cried as she spoke. Her tears fell down in streams, looking extremely miserable. After saying this, she turned around and seemed to cover her face as if she was about to run away. Chu Luyue reached out to pull her sleeve hard, and Xiao Yenru involuntarily fell into his arms again. Seeming to have sensed Chu Luyue's gentleness, Xiao Yenru cried even louder, but her eyes were fixed on Chu Luyue, as if she was reluctant to look away. "Your Highness, only Your Highness can understand my heart. As for others, how others think, I don't care." The more she spoke, the more pitiful she sounded, and the more heart-wrenching she sounded. Chu Luyue finally moved again. He reached out to wipe the tears on her face and said slowly, "Why do you do this? Your Highness, I only have you in my life. No matter what others think, I have nothing to do with me. As for the imperial palace, it doesn't matter if I die like this forever. I think it's good now. At least no one comes to disturb me. No matter how peaceful, no matter how bitter and cold the place is, I can endure it." Xiao Yenru's tears increased, and her eyes were full of affection. She was so sad that she couldn't describe it. She was willing to enjoy the loneliness in this palace for Chu Luyue. She could do anything for Chu Luyue. Such affection would make any man feel moved and distressed. "Well, don't cry. I didn't say that I don't care about you. Chu Luiyue took Xiao Yanru's handkerchief from her hand, gently wiped her tears, and coaxed her angrily. Your Highness. Your Highness, is what you said true? Are you still willing to care about me? Xiao Yanru widened her tearful eyes in surprise. She reached out to hold Chu Luiyue's hand and asked excitedly for an answer, regardless of the current ambiguous situation between them. Between you and Prince Shou. Chu Luiyue paused, and the atmosphere became cold. Your Highness, you have to believe me. How could I have anything to do with Prince Shou? Although he expressed his affection for me, but I only love you. How could I? Xiao Yanru's tears fell again and fell on Chu Luiyue's hand, sparkling. He also likes you and wants to marry you. Chu Luiyue frowned. Although Xiao Yanru's previous identity was good, the Empress might not agree with her. Prince Shou didn't say that he wanted to marry me, and I didn't tell him about it. He only said that he liked me. I didn't want to hear him say that, so I left early. Xiao Yanru looked at Chu Luiyue and said. Hearing this, the suspicion on Chu Luiyue's face disappeared a little. He didn't believe that Chu Liuzhou had to marry Xiao Yanru. Even if Chu Liuzhou really loved Xiao Yanru, he might not be able to pass the Empress's test. Compared with him, Chu Liuzhou had no control over his marriage. Sure enough, Chu Liuzhou liked Xiao Yanru, so he rushed in and said that to him that day. He was just jealous that he had won Xiao Yanru's heart. He had thought about what had happened that day, and Xiao Yanru had tried to send a letter to explain, but Chu Luiyue didn't pay attention to it at all. However, he had such a suspicion in his heart. Now seeing Xiao Yanru say it without hesitation, he looked better. If this was the case, it could explain what Chu Liuzhou had done. Now he and Chu Liuzhou didn't like each other very much. Then what's going on with father? After thinking for a while, Chu Luiyue said again. This was another thorn in his heart, which he couldn't swallow or spit out. Do you think I can do the same to the emperor after treating you like this? I can't do such a thing just to enter the imperial palace. Whether you believe it or not, I will only say it once. It was the Empress, it was the Empress. Speaking of this, Xiao Yanru burst into tears again. Did the Empress hurt you? Chu Luiyue was stunned and immediately held Xiao Yanru's hand tightly and said. Yes, it was the Empress. For Prince Shou. Xiao Yanru choked with sobs, and her beautiful face was full of misery. Chu Luiyue patted her gently on the back with anger on his face. It turned out that the Empress hurt Xiao Yanru. In order to make Chu Liuzhou lose interest in Xiao Yanru, the Empress hurt her to enter the imperial palace in such a dishonorable way. It was too vicious. Thinking of this, he felt a little more pity for Xiao Yanru. After all, there was still some affection for her. Moreover, she had her own reasons for being like this now. Seeing her tearful eyes and sad face, he felt a little pity in his heart. In the current situation, you can only do this. Chu Luiyue said. Your Highness. I will always stay with you. Even if the Empress forces me, I will also. Xiao Yanru's face was as red as blood. Although she was shy, she insisted on expressing her meaning. Even Chu Luiyue was a little moved by such a beauty's deep love for him. He held her in his arms fiercely. Feeling her delicate body in his arms, which was like a flower, he couldn't help feeling his heart beat faster. However, no matter how aroused he was, Chu Luiyue knew that this was not the imperial palace and it was not a suitable place. He slowly let go of Xiao Yanru. Your Highness. Xiao Yanru not only blushed, but also her lips were as delicate as water, which added a little color to her usual appearance. Looking at such delicate and charming lips, another delicate face inexplicably flashed across Chu Liuyue's mind. That kind of face with such a lip color was really stunning. Compared with Xiao Yanru's face, Chu Liuyue's face seemed a little too dull. He still preferred Peony, the queen of flowers. Even when it was cold, it could make the cold moon in the night full of charm and fragrance. Your Highness. Seeing Chu Luyue staring at her in a daze, Xiao Yanru blushed and said softly. Go back first. Don't keep looking for me in the future. Chu Luyue's eyes turned cold and said. Yes, Your Highness. If there is anything you need to inquire, I will definitely help you. I live in a remote place, but I still live in the Imperial Palace. Xiao Yanru became more and more gentle and looked at Chu Luyue with great tenderness. Anyone who saw Xiao Yanru like this would feel that the woman in front of him cared about Chu Luyue deeply until death. Seeing that Xiao Yanru was full of himself, Chu Luyue was very satisfied, but he didn't say what he wanted her to do. He just comforted her and said, live well in the Imperial Palace. If you need anything, I will send some to you. But in order not to attract attention, I dare not send too much to you. You have to know it. Your Highness, you don't have to send anything to me. As long as I know that I am in your heart, I can live any hard life. I will always wait for you. Xiao Yanru's black hair was like clouds, and she looked beautiful. She looked at Chu Luyue and thought about him wholeheartedly. Well, go back first. If there is anything in the future, I will inform you. Chu Luyue said. Yes, Your Highness. Then I will go back first. If someone finds out, it will not be good for Your Highness. Xiao Yanru stopped while she was ahead and said softly. Going too far was as bad as not going far enough. Xiao Yanru knew that it was the best time to win Chu Luyue's heart and feel relieved. She still thought highly of Chu Luyue, so how could she allow Chu Luyue to slip through her fingers? With Chu Luyue, her grandmother and father would definitely think highly of her, and she would get more resources. As for Xiao Jia, who would care about her? She bowed deeply to Chu Luyue, and then left reluctantly, looking back 3 times at every step. Xiao Yanru didn't stop until she couldn't see Chu Luyue's figure when she looked back. The affection in her eyes slowly faded. She looked in the direction and turned to walk. That was the place leading to the Buddha Hall. Pushun Nun lived in the Buddha Hall in the Imperial Palace and presided over the affairs of the Buddha Hall. Chapter 953. Your Highness, the first grandma of Duke Yong's mansion is here. When Yujie came in to report, she curled her lips in disdain. She really looked down on Qin Yuru. She was not a good person when she was in Jiangzhou. Now she didn't know why she came here. Let her in. Xiao Wanru blinked her eyes and said with a smile. It was not unexpected that Qin Yuru would come here. Given Qin Yuru's character, how could she be willing to stay calm now that she knew she was from the royal family? After a while, Yujie led Qin Yuru in. When she saw Xiao Wanru, she just bowed slightly and then sat down on the chair beside her. Such a disrespectful attitude made the maids so angry that their faces turned pale. What's the matter, first Grandma D? Xiao Wanru glanced at Qin Yuru calmly and said lightly. Qin Yuru looked at the decorations around her and felt jealous and hateful for a moment. With her family background, only she could enjoy such a blessing. Why did it happen to Xiao Wanru, not her? Sister, it's the first time I've been here. I didn't expect the decoration of Prince Chen's mansion to be so elegant. In the future, you and I will have a long relationship. We are sisters, so now we can't be estranged. Qin Yuru straightened her back and said with a little pride. Prince Heching had promised to let her become a citizen. As long as she became a citizen of the Chu family, she would be a member of the royal family. She might even be able to become a princess. In terms of her own status, it was much higher than that of Xiao Wanru. If Xiao Wanru hadn't married Prince Chen, she would have to bow to her when she saw her. Although Rui, a great elder princess, was an official member of the royal family, Xiao Wanru's surname was not Chu. First Grandma D, I don't understand what you said. Xiao Wanru raised her eyebrows and said calmly. In fact, it's not a big deal. I'm the same as you. My biological father is not General Qin, but a member of the royal family. Qin Yuru came to Xiao Wanru's place this time. After saying that, she became more and more proud. She wanted Xiao Wanru to be surprised, flustered, and envious of her. Of course, this was only the first step. She didn't have a chance to meet these princes in the past, but now she could meet them whenever she wanted. Although Prince Heching's surname was Chu, he and the emperor were far apart. In such a distant relationship, they could actually marry each other. With her status, even if she couldn't be the princess, she could still be a side concubine. What happened to Great Granny D is related to me. Xiao Wanru raised her eyebrows and asked in surprise with undisguised sarcasm in her watery eyes. As for Madame D, it is a glorious thing for first Grandma D to disobey the rules of a woman. Xiao Wanru's words were blunt, and several servant girls beside her burst into laughter. Seeing Xiao Yenru's flushed face, they secretly praised her. Sister, you've gone too far. Xiao Yenru's face turned red, and she glared at Xiao Wanru and said angrily. First Grandma D, I forgot to tell you something. I'm the only daughter of my parents, and I don't have any other sisters. I don't know why First Grandma D calls me younger sister. Xiao Wanru said with sarcasm in her eyes. She looked at Xiao Yenru with her face turning green and then blue. Qin Wanru, you, Xiao Yenru couldn't sit still anymore. She stretched out her hand, pointed at Xiao Wanru, and said angrily. Xiao Wanru picked up an ornament beside her and threw it at Xiao Yenru's outstretched hand. Xiao Yenru was shocked and hurriedly withdrew her finger. Her fingertips had been scratched and hurt because of the collision. The ornament fell heavily to the ground and rolled twice. It didn't break. I'm Prince Chen's wife now, and not everyone can call me Qin Wanru. Moreover, I'm not called Qin Wanru now. First Grandma D, you seem to be busy and forget such an obvious thing. Xiao Wanru said coldly with a cold look in her eyes. First Grandma D, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't say something trivial, or I will definitely drive you out. Xiao Wanru looked at Xiao Wanru in disbelief, but what she got was Xiao Wanru's cold and sharp eyes. The muscles on her face couldn't help trembling a few times. She stirred the handkerchief in her hand and wanted to pounce on Xiao Wanru and slap her hard. How dare this bitch say that? Come on, drive her out. Seeing that she twisted her face stiffly without saying anything, Xiao Wanru leaned back and said coldly. Yujia answered and came over to pull Xiao Yenru. Xiao Wanru, I have something important to tell you. Ask your servants to leave. Xiao Yenru couldn't wait anymore, stood up suddenly and said. I only have Yujia and Chu Lu here, and they are my confidants. If you want to say something, just say it. Xiao Wanru said casually. She looked very leisurely, reached out to take a cup of scented tea from Chu Li's hand, and glanced at Xiao Yenru in an extremely casual manner, as if she didn't take Xiao Yenru seriously at all. Xiao Yenru was so angry that her face turned pale, but she didn't dare to get angry with Xiao Wanru. She didn't come here just to show off. Now she was not the Xiao Yenru 3 years ago. After being tortured for so long, if she hadn't learned anything, she would have been tortured to death long ago. As long as you can protect me, I promise to tell you a secret of Duke Yong's mansion. Xiao Yenru gritted her teeth and said. She was not really a person who was stubborn. Under the right conditions, she also knew how to be tactful. What happened in Prince Heching's mansion was so smooth that she almost couldn't believe it and even had a kind of dreamlike trance. After returning to Duke Yong's mansion, she thought for a while and decided to sneak out secretly. There were some things that she was really worried about. Now the only suitable candidate she could find was Xiao Wanru. Protect you. First Grandma D, I don't think there is any friendship between you and me. Xiao Wanru said calmly. We grew up together. Although we didn't get along with each other, we still had a childhood friendship. What's more, it's also good for Prince Chen. Maybe the Emperor will change his opinion of Prince Chen. Xiao Yenru suppressed the anger in her heart and raised her head proudly. She didn't believe that Xiao Wanru wouldn't be tempted. Although Chu Luchen was a prince, he was just a useless sick and weak prince. No one knew when he would pass away. At that time, Xiao Wanru, the empty Princess Chen, would be left. She didn't believe that Xiao Wanru wouldn't be worried and afraid. Thinking of this, Xiao Yenru immediately felt that Xiao Wanru was bluffing now. First Grandma Di, if you want to say it, just say it. If not, go back. Xiao Wanru waved her hand and said indifferently. Xiao Wanru, aren't you afraid that Prince Chen will blame you after knowing it? Xiao Yenru said arrogantly. First Grandma Di, do you want to say it? Xiao Wanru said unmoved. Xiao Yenru rolled her eyes and felt that it was more appropriate to talk to Prince Chen. Maybe Prince Chen would find that she was more useful than Xiao Wanru. Is Prince Chen here? Yes, I'll talk about it when I see Prince Chen. This matter is of great importance, so I have to talk to someone important. Xiao Yenru said proudly. Forget it. Xiao Wanru took a sip of tea and said calmly. She waved her hand. No matter whether Xiao Yenru really had something to say or not, she didn't want to hear it. Xiao Yenru was a trouble now, and she might bring trouble wherever she went. Xiao Yenru could take the opportunity to push her out directly. It was unreasonable for her to say something here. In fact, she had somewhat understood Xiao Yenru's idea. It was obvious that Xiao Yenru was worried that Prince Heching would be unstable, so she just looked for another subordinate. With Xiao Yenru's character, as long as she was given a little chance, she would stir up trouble again. Yujie came over, pulled Xiao Yenru up, and pulled her out unceremoniously. Xiao Wanru, how dare you? Xiao Yenru staggered out of the door and said loudly. However, Yujie didn't give her a chance to speak at all. She pulled Xiao Yenru out with another servant girl at the door. Although Xiao Yenru struggled hard, she was no match for Yujie. She was dragged out in a hurry. Mei Shui hurriedly followed behind, but she didn't dare to rush up to take Xiao Yenru back. When they were outside the door, Yujie loosened her hand, and Xiao Yenru fell heavily out. She staggered a few steps and sat heavily on the ground. First Grandma Di, no matter what you are here for today, or what secret you want to tell our prince and princess, the two masters of our mansion won't care. If it is really a big secret, you'd better go to the imperial palace and tell the emperor. Our mansion is small and can't afford to entertain you. Yujie put her hands on her hips and said in front of Xiao Yenru. Then she snorted heavily, turned into the door of Prince Chen's mansion, and closed the door heavily, shutting Xiao Yenru out. Xiao Wanru, you. Xiao Yenru was furious that a little servant girl dared to treat her like this. Before she finished speaking, the door opened again, and she was so scared that she hurriedly shut up. It was easy to meet the king of hell, but difficult to deal with the little devil. Moreover, she was Princess Chen. Mei Shui hurried over to help Xiao Yenru up. Let's go. Xiao Yenru gritted her teeth. Knowing that she would not get any good result if she stayed here, she rolled her eyes and got on the carriage. Wait at the intersection. After getting on the carriage, Xiao Yenru ordered. She didn't believe that she couldn't wait to meet Prince Chen. With her current identity, she could talk to Prince Chen on an equal footing. Since Xiao Wanru dared to treat her like this, she would not spare her. Now she had a chance to meet Prince Chen, which meant that she had a chance to humiliate Xiao Wanru through Prince Chen. She didn't kill Xiao Wanru before, but it didn't mean that she wouldn't in the future. Grandma, Prince Chen may not necessarily meet us. Mei Shui said timidly. What are you afraid of? I am Prince Chen's cousin now, and I have a secret to tell him. He will definitely meet me. Compared with Xiao Wanru, I am much more useful. Xiao Yenru said with hatred. Xiao Wanru humiliated her today, and she would make her pay 100 times more in the future. She would take the position of Princess Chen. Xiao Wanru herself had no vision, but Prince Chen was a man, so he must have vision. This secret was pieced together by the bits and pieces she found in Duke Yong's mansion in the past 3 years. She guessed that there was someone behind Duke Yong, and this person must be a member of the royal family, either Prince Yu or Prince Shou. For this reason, Prince Chen would definitely be interested. Chapter 954. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign small/say net. There was no pop-up window for free reading. What Qin Yuru waited for was indeed Prince Chen's carriage, but she didn't have a chance to go forward. She was whipped out by a guard when she took a few steps. When she fell heavily on the ground, her face was also bruised. Looking at the guards who were shouting in front of her and behind her, Qin Yuru wanted to shout but was stopped by someone. 2 guards with swords pressed her down neatly. One shoved the handkerchief in her hand into her mouth rudely, and the other held her hands up and tied them up with a rope. Mei Shui didn't dare to come over when she saw the situation. She hid behind the carriage and watched the guards of Prince Chen's mansion drag Qin Yuru away like a dead dog. It was not Prince Chen's mansion. Mei Shui followed behind and watched the 2 guards drag Qin Yuru into the Ministry of Justice. There were many people following her along the way, but no one noticed her. Many people followed Qin Yuru to the gate of the Ministry of Justice and discussed curiously. They were all guessing which families Madam or Miss was from. Judging from her clothes, ordinary people couldn't afford to wear them. Seeing Qin Yuru being dragged in, Mei Shui panicked and didn't dare to stay any longer. She rushed back to Duke Yong's mansion. She could only ask Duke Yong's old madam for help now. When she reached the gate, she bumped into another messenger and they fell to the ground together. It was a manservant. He cried loudly, "Quick, quick! Uncle!" Uncle fell into the river and died. The servant at the gate was scared and said, Who are you talking about?" "It's Duke. Hurry up and report to old madam and madam." Duke had an accident. When he came back, he accidentally hit into the river and drowned. The servant was scared and cried loudly. Mei Shui sat on the ground with her whole body aching and looked straight at Duke Yong's mansion in front of her. When she came back with Qin Yuru, she was as confused as she was longing for it now. Even Duke Yong had an accident. Now who would care about Mrs. Affairs? Duke Yong's mansion had indeed suffered one disaster after another, and scandals had been exposed one after another. First, Madame D was burned to death in Ningyuan Army General's mansion by her biological daughter Qin Yuru, who was now the first grandma of Duke Yong's mansion. Then, she said that first Miss Qin was not the biological daughter of Ningyuan Army General but the daughter of Prince Heching's 4th son. Later, she said that Duke Yong could not bear the blow and accidentally fell into the lake and drowned when he was distracted. Of course, there were many theories about drowning. Some said that Duke Yong couldn't stand so many blows and fell into the river because he couldn't think straight. It was also said that Duke Yong was pushed down by others. There happened to be an accident at that section of the road. Some people were catching thieves. When Duke Yong walked to that section, he was accidentally pushed into the river by the onlookers. At that time, Duke Yong was not the only one who fell into the river, but he was the only one who had an accident. When he was rescued, he was already in trouble. The daughter he had raised for more than 10 years was not his biological daughter. Not only was she not his biological daughter, but she also killed her biological mother. This matter was confirmed by Duke Yong's old madam. And she also left evidence in the hands of Duke Yong's old madam. Qin Yuru was indeed not Qin Huaiyong's biological daughter, but Chu Huairan's. But it was also true that Qin Yuru killed her mother. When Qin Yuru escaped to Prince Chen's mansion and wanted to threaten Princess Chen, she was caught by Prince Chen and sent directly to the Ministry of Justice. Once such a thing was verified, she would be beheaded. Even if Qin Yuru was now a relative of the royal family, it was useless. The Ministry of Justice sentenced her to be beheaded after autumn. However, this matter was not over yet. Some people said that Qin Yuru had a secret to tell at that time, but Princess Chen didn't listen to it and drove her out. Then Princess Chen didn't listen to it, but Qin Yuru talked for a long time when she went to Prince Heching's mansion. Did she not tell her biological father and grandfather the secret that even Princess Chen, who had never been on good terms with, wanted to tell? At that time, Prince Heching recognized Qin Yuru without saying anything. Many people were a little suspicious of Prince Heching, who never appeared in front of the public. Did she really not tell him? If she did, what was it? Secret reports were sent to the emperor one by one. Seeing that Duke Yong had gone to his son's mansions before his death, the emperor was furious and called all his sons to scold them. Of course, Chu Luchen was not included. At that time, Chu Luchen was in the palace and not in the mansion, and the spies didn't find that Duke Yong's mansion went to Prince Chen's mansion. Prince Yu and Commandery Prince Qing were the most suspicious. Both of them were thrown a few reports, and their faces were smashed and swollen. For this matter, Chu Luchen was just a spectator and didn't care about the emperor's anger at all. After the emperor threw all the reports, he said, "Uncle, Duke Yong has a secret." The emperor stopped another report in his hand and looked at Chu Luchen. "What secret?" "I don't know, but I think what Qin Yuru said to me in my mansion should be true. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so confident." Later, when she saw me return to the mansion, she still wanted to rush up to me. "She should have something solid in her hand," Chu Luchen said casually. He was the only one who didn't get scolded. Even Chu Liuzhou and Chu Liuxin were scolded just now. "Uncle, Qin Yuru has been married to Duke Yong's mansion for 3 years. During these 3 years, she basically didn't go back to Ningyuan Army General's mansion. If she has a secret, it is most likely to be from Duke Yong's mansion. What kind of secret can make her think that it can move me? Does she think that I will think highly of her?" The emperor couldn't guess what kind of thing could move Chu Luchen, but he knew it couldn't be a trivial matter. His cold eyes fell on Chu Luyue and Chu Qing in front of him. Both of them seemed to have secretly talked with Duke Yong. One was his son, and the other was his nephew. "Qin Yuru didn't get along well with my wife in the past. She tried to kill my wife several times and tried to push all the scandals she caused on my wife. Now, in this situation, why does she think that my wife will help her? Unless this matter is really important." Chu Liuchen's eyes turned slightly, and he smiled faintly. He was very beautiful and elegant. Chu Liuyue's heart trembled, and his eyes narrowed subconsciously. This was the secret between him and Duke Yong. The reason why Duke Yong died was also because of this secret. He couldn't let his father know this secret, or he would be doomed eternally. He clenched his hands hard and didn't dare to make a sound. He just lowered his head quietly, as if he didn't dare to move after being punished. Only he knew that at this moment, his heart was in his throat. How much did Qin Yuru know? Would she get him involved? If he had known this, he would have sent people to kill Qin Yuru at that time, lest this cheap woman ruin his plan. Did Chu Luchen, the invalid, guess something? Asked Qin Yuru. The emperor thought for a while and said coldly, "Uncle, I'm afraid it's too late." Chu Luchen shook his head. "How can it be too late?" The emperor frowned. "Uncle, if Qin Yuru really knows something, she heard a lot when she was shouting at the door of my mansion. Although she is in prison, she has been in contact with too many people. You can't find anything even if you want to." Chu Luchen shook his head with a smile. The prison of the Ministry of Justice was strict, but it was not impossible to see people, especially for someone as special as Qin Yuru. She did not commit any crime for political reasons, so anyone could see her as long as they gave her some money. If there was anything, they would have already passed it to Qin Yuru. Qin Yuru was dead now, so it was useless to threaten her with death. What should we do? The emperor nodded and thought that Chu Luchen was reasonable. He had been negligent before. "Uncle, directly investigate Duke Yong's mansion. Since Qin Yuru can find it, you should also be able to find it." Chu Luchen smiled. Chu Luyue lowered his head and his face changed dramatically. "Come, people from Duke Yong's mansion." The emperor thought it was reasonable. He slammed his hand on the table and gave the order. He didn't believe that Duke Yong's mansion could keep this secret. It was rumored that Duke Yong's death was accidental, or he couldn't bear the blow, so he died, but the emperor didn't believe it. It was so coincidental that he had to be suspicious. The minister of the Ministry of Justice was ordered to leave to deal with the cases of people from Duke Yong's mansion. "Your Majesty, Zhao Di is kneeling outside." Durong came in and whispered in the emperor's ear. If she wants to kneel, let her kneel. The emperor waved his hand coldly and said. Durong didn't dare to say anything more. He left and walked to the imperial study in front of the imperial elixir pavilion. There was a weak woman kneeling there in thin clothes, with her head lowered and saying nothing. There was a palace maid kneeling beside her. When she saw Durong coming, she hurriedly begged, Eunuch Durong. Please return Jowie D. We can't make the decision for this kind of thing. Durong advised. The emperor was angry at this time, and no matter who came, it would not end well. Eunuch Durong, I'll just kneel. Jowie D raised her head and said with a haggard look. Since such a thing had happened to her family, she didn't dare to go back now. Jowie, this has little to do with you. It's just the young mistress of your mansion. Durong thought that the cause of these things was this young mistress. She was simply a jinx. When she was in Qin's mansion, she made Qin's mansion unlucky and was scolded by others. Now she entered Duke Yong's mansion and made Duke Yong fall into such a thing. The emperor still wanted to investigate it. If he really found out, he was afraid that the entire Duke Yong's mansion would not be safe. Eunuch Durong, my brother died unjustly. Someone must have plotted against him. Please report to the emperor that I have something important to say. Jowie D looked at Durong with tears in her eyes. Durong hesitated for a moment and said, It's not that I don't want to help Jowie, but no one can help you in this matter. Eunuch Durong won't embarrass you. What I want to tell the emperor is about Duke Yong's mansion. My brother went to the palace to see me before and left something for me. Now that I think about it, it may be useful to the emperor. Jowie D said sadly. Chapter 955. When Chu Luqian came back, it was very late, and the new moon was already hanging on the branch. Hearing that Chu Luqian was back, Xiao Wanru took him to the corridor. In the past, Chu Luqian returned to the mansion early. Let's go in. Why are you outside at this time? Chu Luqian took her hand and looked unhappy. Then he waved his hand, and the servant girl and Xiao Xuanzi stopped. The two of them entered the room hand in hand. Xiao Wanru stepped forward, tiptoed, untied his light gray cloak with gold thread, and put it on the shelf. What happened in the palace? Xiao Wanru said uneasily. Since he came back at this time, something must have happened. Duke Yong is suspected of secretly bribing the officials by raising a Yangzhou thin horse. Chu Luqian casually pulled Xiao Wanru to sit down on the pit. Yangzhou thin horse. Xiao Wanru was stunned for a moment, and her long eyelashes fluttered. Only Yangzhou thin horse. Those girls from good families were not only Yangzhou thin horse, but also Chu Luiyue secretly helped them. She broke free from Chu Luqian's hand and poured a cup of tea for him. They only said that it was Yangzhou thin horse. As for other things, they didn't find out much. Duke Yong's mansion was stripped of its nobility, demoted to commoners, and driven out of the capital city. Chu Luqian said lightly, took the tea and took a sip. Although Chu Luiyue didn't directly have anything to do with Duke Yong, he couldn't explain clearly that Duke Yong went to the mansion to find him. Even if he went to the palace afterwards, it was useless. When Duke Yong went to the mansions of the princes, Chu Luqian had already entered the palace. It had nothing to do with him, and Duke Yong didn't go to find him. Although Chu Luiyue also entered the palace later, when Duke Yong went there, he was still in the mansion. Chu Luqian entered the palace early, so he was not suspected, but Chu Luiyue entered the palace late, so he was suspected. If there was no comparison, this kind of thing couldn't be explained at once. However, with Chu Luqian as a comparison, Chu Luiyue seemed to be more deliberate. Duke Yong has reduced the title of nobility. You don't have to come back so late, do you? Xiao Wanru said softly, feeling surprised in her heart. It could be said that Duke Yong had suppressed the matter to the minimum. It was indeed a big crime to raise a weak horse and send it to officials, but it was not to the extent of confiscating the whole family. If it was found that Chu Luiyue was also involved in this matter, and it was to help Chu Luiyue raise this kind of good man, who was sent to various mansions as spies, it would be a big crime. no one in Duke Yong's mansion could escape. Don't you think Duke Yong's mansion had a narrow escape this time? Chu Luchen said with a smile. Under the light, the beautiful young man looked a little lazy. Did someone help them? Xiao Wanru thought for a while and asked immediately. The answer was obvious. If no one had intervened, the case of Duke Yong's mansion would not have been found out so quickly, and the case would not have been closed so quickly. Moreover, they would not have let it go so easily. Duke Yong's death meant that he had to bear all the punishments. Zhuozhua, who do you think it was? Chu Luchen pulled Xiao Wanru to the couch and sat down again, squinting at her and asking. Xiao Wanru thought for a while and felt that it could not be Chu Luyue. In the current situation, Chu Luyue could not protect himself, so how could he care about Duke Yong? It was good enough that he did not deny it. This person must have something to do with Duke Yong. Even if he helped Duke Yong on the surface, it could be justified. Moreover, he could make it clear in front of the emperor. He must have something to do with Duke Yong and has something to do with him on the surface. Could it be? Xiao Wanru thought of something and said, could it be Zhao Di? Zhao Di was Duke Yong's concubine sister and also Madame Di's concubine sister. This concubine sister did not have a good relationship with Madame Di and seldom contacted with her. In the last life, Xiao Wanru had never heard that Zhao Di summoned Madame Di to the palace. On the one hand, it was because she did not have a good relationship with Madame Di. On the other hand, it was because she was cautious. Yes, she was cautious. Although Zhao Di looked extremely weak that day, she looked very cautious and deliberately looked for an opportunity to see her. Xiao Wanru did not know the reason, but she was sure that she definitely had a purpose that time. She just did not know whether Zhao Di's target was her or someone else. Zhuozhua, you are so smart. It is indeed Zhao Di. Chu Luchen smiled and reached out to gently pinch Xiao Wanru's nose. Xiao Wanru felt pain because of his pinch. She hurriedly slapped his hand away and covered her nose. Her eyes were sore and watery because of her nose being pinched, and she looked extremely pitiful. Chu Luchen felt that the cat he raised was so pitiful, and he couldn't help laughing even more. Standing outside the door, Xiao Xuanzi heard it clearly and immediately felt relieved. His master was in a good mood. That was good, that was good. He had to be more respectful to the princess in the future. Don't reach out. Xiao Wanru reached out to slap away Chu Liuchen's hand, which was about to reach out to make trouble again. Did Zhao Di find out what Duke Yong's mansion did? Otherwise, this matter would not be ended so easily. Zhao Di said that she had something left by Duke Yong in her hand. She didn't care about it at that time and only said that Duke Yong once told her that if something happened to him, she should present this thing to the emperor. When the emperor saw it, it was still sealed. It can be seen that Zhao Di has never seen it. Chu Luchen said, but his eyes were a little deeper. Zhao Di was smart. The seal was sealed, and there was Duke Yong's seal on it. It was impossible for anyone to tear it. Zhao Di knew nothing about what was written inside. She had been in the palace for several years and was a daughter of a concubine. No one would tell her what happened in her mansion. Is Zhao Di all right? Xiao Wanru also thought of this possibility and couldn't help asking. It was amazing that Zhao Di could protect herself in the face of such a big thing and the destruction of her family. She is all right, and she has the credit of proving it. In addition, my uncle has always been good to her. She has saved my uncle a lot of trouble this time. Chu Luchen said lightly, when you go to the palace in the future, stay away from her. This woman is not so simple. She is Zhao, and I am Princess Chen. Even if I meet her, her rank is not as high as mine. Xiao Wanru curled her red lips carelessly and said. If Zhao Di behaved herself, she would not make trouble for her. But if Zhao Di was also restless and wanted to hurt her, she would not sit still and wait for death. Did something happen again? Xiao Wanru rolled her watery eyes. She felt that it was impossible for Chu Luchen to come back so late. It involved Chu Luyue. When he defended himself, he mentioned Chu Liuzhou again. In Liuzhou, the two of them quarreled again. My uncle was so angry that he scolded them all, and even alerted the Empress and Imperial Grandmother. It was so noisy that he couldn't even handle a family matter. How could he be the ruler of a country? Chu Liuchen's eyes gradually became cold, and a trace of coldness flashed across his eyes. This kind of words was almost rebellious, because he was talking about the emperor of a country. Xiao Wanru hurriedly pulled the corner of his robe, and her eyes became nervous. Don't panic. Don't worry. I won't talk about it outside. Sensing Xiao Wanru's nervousness, Chu Luchen smiled, reached out to hold Xiao Wanru in his arms, and patted her gently. You. Xiao Wanru gently bit her lip. She wanted to say something, but it was difficult for her to say it at the moment. If you have something to say, just say it. It's not your character to hesitate. Chu Luchen teased and looked down at her. The girl in his arms was not an ordinary girl. Of course, it was not an ordinary girl to say such words. Do you hate the emperor? Xiao Wanru asked in a low voice in Chu Liuchen's arms. I don't hate him. I just find him annoying. Chu Luchen said lightly. His tone didn't sound like he was talking about the emperor of a country, but as natural as asking her if she had eaten breakfast this morning. Annoying? Xiao Wanru repeated in surprise. This emperor had robbed Chu Luchen of the throne, but he didn't feel hatred, but just annoyance. However, his answer also made her breathe a sigh of relief. There were some things that she couldn't avoid after marrying into Prince Chen's mansion. If it was just annoyance instead of hatred, it would be much better. At least it didn't make people feel that there was such a strong hatred, and there was no need for such a strong hatred. He can never handle his own family affairs well. There are so many women in the harem, and they fight every day. Not only the women in the harem, but also his sons. They fight so fiercely. I don't know if he regrets it and whether the decision he made was worth it. Chu Luchen said coldly. There was no longer a smile in his voice. Xiao Wanru reached out and gently wrapped her arms around his waist, burying her head in his arms. It became quiet in the room. Only their breaths intertwined, diluting the coldness at that moment. I will leave in 3 days. If you have something to say, you must go to Imperial Grandmother. As for others, you can ignore them if you want. Chu Luyue and Chu Liuzhou will also behave themselves recently. After a long while, Chu Luchen said in a soft voice. In fact, he had said this more than once, but in Xiao Wanru's heart, she still felt a little weak with a trace of sweetness. If he didn't care about it, he wouldn't have said it. Okay, I will go to greet Imperial Grandmother and deal with it carefully. Don't worry. Go to the Imperial Palace through the side door, not the front door. The side door is much closer and more convenient. The pavilion in front of Chuxiu Palace is also mine. If you are tired, you can go there to have a rest. If you want to enjoy the scenery, you can stay there. It was originally my place, and there are my people. Chu Luchen said again. I know. Xiao Wanru nodded and closed her eyes slightly. Chu Liuchen's arms made her feel at ease, which she had never felt before. Even if he just held her like this, he could make her not panic, be vigilant, and not be so paranoid. Because of Chu Luchen, she could still be a soft and delicate girl. Chapter 956. The matter of Duke Yong's mansion stirred up a lot of waves in the capital city. Not only the indifferent title of Duke Yong's mansion, but also many officials went to investigate the inner court, for fear of receiving the women sent by Duke Yong, and for fear that the emperor would investigate them. Fortunately, this matter was caused by Duke Yong's mansion, and finally ended in Duke Yong's mansion. Many aristocratic families secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The matter of Qin Yuru was also exposed. It was not that no one knew nothing about Madame D's affair in the past. Some people said that they had seen Madame D and Chu Huairan meeting in private. It was said that they secretly met several times at that time. Later, Madame D hurriedly married far away because she couldn't find a good family in the capital city. Originally, everyone thought that Madame D and Chu Huairan had an affair. They didn't expect that not only did they have an affair, but they also had Qin Yuru. Madame D even married Qin Huayong with Qin Yuru. This Ningyuan army general was also a familiar person to the people in the capital city. Although he had only been in the capital city for 3 years, so many things happened to his 2 daughters that people had to pay attention to this Ningyuan army general. Neither of his 2 daughters was his biological daughter. Although the younger daughter was entrusted by an old friend and raised in his mansion after knowing her background, the older daughter had been living in the identity of First Miss Qin. In the past, she had framed the younger daughter in all kinds of ways. Looking at the way Qin's mansion dealt with it, it was also on the side of the older daughter. Unexpectedly, the younger daughter, who was originally weak, now became Princess Chen after returning to the family. The vicious and disobedient eldest daughter not only destroyed her husband's family after getting married, but also burned her biological mother to death. Feng Shui really rotated. What people did, God was watching, and evil would be punished. It was not a lie. In a simple yard, the beautiful Zhao Qingyu gritted her teeth and asked, was Qin Yuru really caught and beheaded after autumn? Why do you care about her at this time? Wang Xingxue said impatiently, stood up and circled several times on the spot. Did he really not come again? No. Zhao Qingyu, the former Ning Kaixian, was not paying attention to this at all. Thinking of the hatred in Qin Yuru's eyes, she asked, can I visit the prisoner? I want to see what happens to this bitch. She almost caused me to die in prison, and now it's her turn. How could she not hate him? If not for Qin Yuru, she would have married Di Yan at that time. If she had married Di Yan, things would not have ended up like this and there would not have been so many scandals. Ning Kaixian felt that all these things were caused by Qin Yuru. Without Qin Yuru, she would still be the young madam of Duke Yong, and Duke Yong's mansion would still be fine. If there was a chance, she would visit Di Yan and let him see clearly how blind he was at that time. What are you looking at? She's just a woman in prison. What's there to look at? Don't you feel unlucky? Wang Xingxue said angrily. Are you talking about me? Ning Kaixian felt wronged and her eyes turned red. She was also in prison at that time. Speaking of which, she was the woman in prison. Okay, don't cry. If you don't do it well, both of us will be in trouble. Don't you want to marry me and be my legal wife? Wang Xingxue still needed Ning Kaixian now, so he could only lower himself and sit down to coax her. That person doesn't come. What can I do? It's you who came here for nothing before. If he sees you, he will definitely be suspicious. Ning Kaixian stopped while she was ahead. She wiped her tears and put the blame on Wang Xingxue with grievance. Speaking of this, Wang Xingxue became more and more annoyed. How could he know that Yan Shi would not come? Wasn't she easy to fool and obedient before? Why didn't she come suddenly? It had been a few days, but she hadn't come. If she didn't come, there would be the imperial examination. After the imperial examination, she might not have a chance. If he couldn't do it well, it would be really troublesome. Wang Xingxue felt a headache. He dared to go against Marquis Xing's mansion before because he had the evidence of Wang Yishu. Now this evidence was useless. If he didn't do something for Marquis Xing would not only not let him come to his mansion, but also deal with him. After thinking for a while, Wang Xingxue gritted his teeth, stamped his feet, and said, go to see him again. I take the initiative to see him. Didn't you say that I couldn't take the initiative before? Ning Kaixian said in confusion. She had sneaked out of the capital city before and stayed in a farm outside the city. Ning Kaixian, who was bent on revenge, was not willing to stay in the farm for the rest of her life, so she secretly sent someone to see Wang Xingxue. The two of them had been in cahoots with each other in private. This time, it was also a trap set by Wang Xingxue to plot against the scholar named Yan Shi. Ning Kaixian was a crucial part of it. If you go there, you can let others see that you have a relationship with him. In the future, when something happens, you can also push the blame to him. Wang Xingxue said vaguely. Then he took Ning Caishian's hand and said affectionately, after this matter is over, we will have a sum of money. I can marry you and have a big marriage. I can't let you feel wronged. But, what about my sister? Ning Caishian lowered her head and pulled the handkerchief in her hand. Your sister is just a concubine, and you will have to take care of her in the future. It is also a good thing that you two sisters marry me together. In the future, you will help me clean up the backyard, and your sister will naturally be under your control. Wang Xingxue said in an increasingly gentle tone, ruthlessly belittling Ning Xueqing. She was just a concubine. How dare she meddle in his affairs? But my sister has always been cruel and merciless. I am afraid of her. Ning Caishian raised her delicate face with tears in her eyes. Her timid and delicate look really made people feel sorry for her. Vicious and merciless. Do you think you can surpass your wife? If she really does something vicious in the future, you can directly sell her. She is just a concubine, and she can't really turn the world upside down. Wang Xingxue indifferently flattered Ning Caishian. His words made Ning Caishian secretly proud. She just wanted to be a wife, not a concubine. Ning Xueqing had embarrassed her a lot in the past. Now she was just a concubine, but she could be a legal wife. With the position of legal wife and Wang Xingxue's words, if her sister was obedient in the future, she could raise her. If she was disobedient, she could directly sell her, so as not to hurt her feelings. Thinking of this, she involuntarily showed a smile on her face. She took Wang Xingxue's hand, pressed it on her face, and said softly, I will listen to you. I will go in a while. But what do you think of the thing we talked about last time? You can let her go. As Ning Caishian spoke, she curled her lips toward the door, where a servant girl was standing. With her there, when she dies, it will be even more difficult to explain. She didn't want to have too much to do with Yen. She was going to be a legal wife, so how could she have too much to do with other men? Let her die. Wang Xingxue frowned, but he didn't withdraw his hand. His hand slipped into Ning Caishian's neckline, which made her pout coquettishly. If she dies, there will be no more evidence. And the marriage certificate is a little difficult now. Ning Caishian nodded and pushed his hand shyly and charmingly, but she didn't really push his hand away. How to let her die? It's a little difficult. You have to get other people's approval, and then you have to get her approval. Wang Xingxue felt that it was still a little difficult to do. In fact, it's not difficult. Find a place with many people and let her jump off a building. Then, there will be no evidence. Ning Caishian said disdainfully. In fact, she had long wanted to find someone else to serve her. This damned servant girl dared to secretly seduce Wang Xingxue when she was not paying attention. How could she tolerate her? It happened that a dead person was needed for this matter, so it was her. Will she agree? Wang Xingxue's hand paused for a moment, and then he moved again. Ning Caishian snuggled into Wang Xingxue's arms, panting. Her face was flushed and she was very shy, but her words were extremely vicious. It's nothing. Give her some medicine first, and then tell her it will be okay. It's just a play. Just find a place to jump and pretend. Medicine? What kind of medicine can make her do this? Wang Xingxue didn't believe it. This kind of thing was too incredible. There is a kind of medicine. After taking it, she will be in a daze, as if she was drunk. At this time, we can take her there and tell her that someone will come to her rescue. Let her say a few words and then jump off. That's all. Ning Caishian suggested. Under normal circumstances, of course, she knew that no one would come to her rescue after she jumped off. But if she was in a daze and listened to everything, it was easy to be fooled. Do you have this kind of medicine? Wang Xingxue asked, how long does it last? I have this kind of medicine, but it doesn't last long. I got it by chance. But even if it doesn't last long, she can still jump off a building. Ning Kaixian said proudly. How did you get it? Wang Xingxue had never heard of this kind of medicine and was surprised. It was by chance. I saved a person, and he gave it to me, and then he left. Ning Kaixian said vaguely. She couldn't tell all her secrets. Originally, these were to be used to deal with Qin Yuru. Now that Qin Yuru was going to die, this medicine was useless, but it could be used for other purposes. Xingxue, let me see Qin Yuru and let her see Child Yan. Coincidentally, there will be evidence in the future. Many people will see her with Child Yan, and it will definitely help you succeed. A servant girl is always not enough. Wang Xingxue was still a little hesitant. If you don't say she is a servant girl, who will know? Just dress her up and send her over. Ning Kaixian rolled her eyes and said. She didn't want to be this unlucky bait. It was good that Yan Liqiang didn't come. Who knew what kind of end she would end up in? She didn't believe that nothing would happen to her. It would be better to send a restless servant girl out. Even if someone died, it would be someone else, and it had nothing to do with her. She still wanted to see Qin Yuru's miserable condition. Okay, then it's settled. Wang Xingxue didn't hesitate for a long time this time. After thinking about it, he agreed. This was indeed the best thing at the moment. He couldn't get the marriage certificate, and now it was not easy for him to see Yan Shi. Death was the best thing to do. A dead person without any evidence was enough to be a marriage certificate. The resolute words before death were the evidence.